All right, Mark, in Edmonton, it's just the kind of day guaranteed to get you thinking about the Grey Cup as the Bombers, the Eskimos, and all the fans at Commonwealth Stadium are. Commonwealth Stadium is ready for part two. It's the time of year when the Eskimos seem bigger than life, but the Bombers have a playoff history of their own. Angelo and the D will light you up. KD can also make a point with a big play of his own. Edmonton has its share of showstoppers. Danny Mack is a proven playoff performer, while Willie will plug the holes and stuff the ball carriers. So dress warmly, and remember, no shirt, no service. It's November, there's snow on the ground, and where else would you expect the Eskimos and the Bombers to be but in the playoffs, and on this day facing each other for the right to go against Calgary in the division final, one step closer to the Grey Cup. Welcome now to Commonwealth Stadium in Edmonton as semifinal Sunday on the CFL on CBC continues. One decision already in, Montreal is through to the division final. Well, most teams begin the season hoping to get to the playoffs, but their record suggests that Edmonton and Winnipeg can take for granted they'll be there. The Eskimos are making their 25th straight playoff appearance. The Bombers their 17th, and probably never in Winnipeg's playoff history has such a big deal been made over the team's starting quarterback. Cal Murphy deliberated for a week, and finally this morning, Kent Austin and Reggie Slack arrived at Commonwealth at last knowing which of the two will start. Austin was told at 11 o'clock last night the assignment is his, with Slack ready for early, middle, or late relief. So there, the secret is out, but there's still a few minutes to go before kickoff. Chris Cuthbert and James Curry will describe the proceedings, and Chris, the Eskimos are not all that worried over Winnipeg's starting QB.
No, Scott, Ron Lancaster said he wasn't going to lose any sleep over it. In fact, he told us yesterday Kent Austin will start.
Well, he felt he would start. He prepared his team for both quarterbacks, knowing that Austin would probably get the start and Slack would probably come in relief.
James, no quarterbacking controversy for the Winnipeg or for the Edmonton Eskimos. Danny McManus, though, which one will show up? The guy that threw 27 interceptions this year, or the man who passed for 4,425 yards? Only Doug Flutie had more passing yardage. He does have a great history in the playoffs, and he doesn't throw as many interceptions when it's all on the line.
Well, in inclement weather like this, quarterbacks like to play it close to the best, and they like to go over the middle. Bobby Evans and Greg Frears are going to have two outstanding afternoons this afternoon for Winnipeg in the middle of their defense, because look for Danny McManus with Darren Flutie and Mark Tolbert to go over the middle.
Speaking of defense, is it advantage defense? Did you like to see the snow fly at this time of year?
I particularly didn't care for the bad weather. Defensive linemen did not like to put their hands on that wet, cold snow.
Well, we'll get you a blanket and keep you warm this afternoon as we rejoin Scott.
All right, Chris, the surest hands of any Canadian receiver in the CFL belong to Calgary's Dave Sapunjas. He's got 2 awards in the past 3 years to prove it. Big hits following catches have sent him running to the broadcast booth today. As the Stamps wait to see who emerges today as their opposition in the West Final, we welcome Dave Sapunjas as our game day analyst. Now listen, big audiences in both Edmonton and Winnipeg for this telecast, so you're half wrong before you open your mouth, but who do you want to face in the West Final?
Well, there's something about that great rivalry between Edmonton and Calgary that I do like, but I'll tell you what, we'll play anyone. We'll play Winnipeg or Edmonton.
And normally a hard-hitting journalist like myself would not let you sit on the fence like that, but I know the position you're in, and so I will. Edmonton heavily favorite in this semifinal. What must the Bombers do to pull off the upset?
Ken Austin must get hot. Mike Richardson must run the ball extremely well, and they must win the turnover battle.
Dave, tell me about footwear today. A fleet-footed receiver like yourself knows all about traction, so go ahead and give us the 10-cent shoe course.
This is the traditional shoe, a 7-stud shoe that they use in perfect weather, but it's not perfect weather out there. It's a 50 or 60 stud shoe that they're using. We don't have any right now because all the guys are wearing it.
And the Bombers arrived at Commonwealth this morning, took one look at the field, and took off to Sport Check to buy a selection of footwear. So the snow continuing to fall here at Commonwealth Stadium. We'll see if the players can get traction. The kickoff beckons now. Here are Chris and James.
Thank you, Scott. Well, the road to the Grey Cup often goes through a snowstorm out west, and some of the great games played in recent memory have been through the snow. We'll talk about that throughout the afternoon. Well, there's Cal Murphy, who was in a bit of a curmudgeonly mood yesterday. His team a big underdog, but Ron Lancaster has looked at the stats, and he sincerely says there's no reason for our team to be overconfident here, even though everybody expects the Edmonton Eskimos to dominate this afternoon. They have been installed as 11-point favorites as Troy Westwood kicks it off off one of the short men and down to the 50-yard line. Not sure whether that was the intended plan of Westwood or whether he slipped when kicking off. He's wearing a broomball shoe on his non-kicking foot.
I think that's part of the element showing its face early as we look at Danny McManus's numbers.
Yeah, I was surprised to see that McManus passed for more yardage than any other quarterback but for Doug Flutie. 27 interceptions was a club record this year, but McManus was the hero a couple of years ago for the BC Lions. Can he recapture that magic? Danny McManus, first play of the game, he gives to Blunt and straight up the middle. And the Eskimos have said they will try to establish the running game early today. There's Chris Green, who gets the start at left guard. Ed Cusey, who has normally occupied that position, is out with an ankle problem. Rod Conniff, the great veteran, and this offensive line has done a solid job in front of McManus this year. How about Darren Flutie's numbers? He's been outstanding with 1,362 yards on the season, and we know what he did a couple of years ago in the Western Final in the snow. Second down, and Blunt is across the 50 down to the 49 of Winnipeg, and he is going to be close to a first down. Looks like he may be a yard short.
Well, what you got to do is worry about your footing, especially the offensive linemen in running situations, keeping their feet underneath them. When you're drive blocking, you try to get a little more torque, and you can lose traction.
Seen the Eskimos go to the ground in the first two plays, just 7th best in the CFL running the football this year. And in fact, they didn't have much success, as you can see, they're less than a yard short. Didn't have much success against Winnipeg. Only the Calgary Stampeders were stingier against the Eskimos on the ground this year.
Well, Ronnie had talked about that they only averaged 3.4 yards a carry on the ground versus Winnipeg, and that creates some concern when you're trying to establish your running game. You need to be able to pick up at least 5 yards so you can put your quarterback in a second and medium.
Third, less than a yard from the Winnipeg 49, full house backfield. And this will be a test of the traction as Tony Burse lunges for the first down. This running game much more effective for the Eskimos when Burse is in there as the fullback.
Well, he's that big horse that you need in the backfield. He is the type of back who is going to go north and south. He's not a very elusive runner, but once he gets out in the open field, his speed is very deceptive.
He did have a 59-yard touchdown run against Winnipeg, but one of his keys is the fact Winnipeg can't key on Eric Blunt with Burse in the backfield. It's a 3-4 setup with Tony Hill at defensive end for the Blue Bombers, but the big story is their active linebackers. It's a rich tradition in Winnipeg. Here's McManus working against that defense, and the first completion of the game goes to Darren Flutie, and he's matched up against Gerald Bond.
Well, Darren Flutie, he's averaged over 140 yards a game during the playoffs in the last 3 years.
Damian Lyons, a former Edmonton Eskimo. One of the interesting notes here, James, is that Cal Murphy consulted with Lyons about the footwear here at Commonwealth Stadium in these kind of conditions.
Well, he's accustomed to playing on the snow surface here at Commonwealth, and early you see how effective it's been against the players.
So the Eskimos, not deterred by the elements so far, driving with their first possession. Here's Blunt, and he goes straight up the middle and down to the Winnipeg 30-yard line, and that's a gain of 7.
As defensive players, when you're playing against a running game and field conditions like this is where discipline comes into play. You have to play under control. You can't expect to get off the ball too quickly. Just maintain your balance and try to ward off the blockers.
So second down for the Eskimos. And McManus again hands it off to Blunt, and this time he's stopped up by John Kropke. Colin Scribner in on the tackle as well. Scribner's brother Glenn, property of the Eskimos, but out for the season with a torn ACL.
I think the snow is affecting the players' hearing effects also, because the only 2 players that got off on the ball were Rod Conniff and Danny McManus. All the rest of the linemen stayed in their stance, so Edmonton really couldn't get untracked on that play.
This is the Eskimos' first game in 2 weeks. They had the bye in the final a week, and I think some people expected the offensive timing may not be absolutely as crisp as the weather here in the opening quarter.
Well, it probably wouldn't be, because if you look at these conditions that they've had these for several days here in Edmonton, so they haven't been able to go out and have full practice sessions.
So Sean Fleming is out to open the scoring for the Eskimos. This is an attempt of 36 yards and a test of his footing. Fleming puts it up and puts it through. So the Eskimos' first possession of the game is a productive one in the snow at Commonwealth. It's 3-0 Edmonton. There's some hardy CFL fans. Remember 5 years ago, the Western Final here at Calgary and Edmonton. Dave Sapungis, fond memories of that in the snow at Commonwealth Stadium. Ken Austin is the quarterback for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. The doubts about Austin, I guess, during the week, the shoulder injury. He's got ligament problems in the knee, but he has strapped it all up for today's start in the Western Semi. And the first carry is to Michael Richardson, who bounced off the first tackle. Leroy Blue made the initial hit. Richardson bounced off and may have got back to the line of scrimmage. Ken Austin has these numbers on the year, so he had interception problems as well. In fact, Reggie Slack had the better numbers in action against Edmonton this year, but like the situation in Calgary, it seems like Slack is more effective off the bench. Second down, and Austin will go outside, and this one looks like it's picked off. No, incomplete is the ruling. They're saying that Kavis Reed was out of bounds.
Well, that's going to be a very tough call. It looked like Kavis Reed might have came down. All you have to do in the CFL is get 1 foot down in bounds before going out, and I think Kavis might have a valid argument on this one. Great throw by Austin to get it to the sideline. A lot of velocity, but Basinger just couldn't come up with it. Got a knee down.
Should have been an interception, but it is not, and so the Bombers get the first break. Ron Lancaster saying yesterday that this man is the best punter he's seen in the CFL, and in the inclement conditions, Bob Cameron usually very reliable, but Gizmo Williams did run one back against Cameron and the Bombers in the second meeting between these two teams this year.
And that was the first time in Gizmo's career that he has victimized Bob Cameron. And he took one back to the house for 6 to blow the game wide open.
So did Don Blair in that second meeting. These two teams split their regular season contests. Ball bouncing by Blair, and on the frozen tundra here at Commonwealth, there'll be some unpredictable bounces today. Gizmo taken down at the Edmonton 39-yard line.
Well, Chris, Gizmo Williams, no chance for a return there, but the Giz knows one thing for sure, and that is that in weather like this, it is all important to hang on to the football.
The most important thing, too, I have to hold on to the ball. That's going to be one of the main, that's going to be the key of the game, too. Ronnie was just telling me, and Don Blair said, it's great, you know, if you get the ball and run it, but the most important thing, if there's a lot of guys around, just secure the ball and hold on to it.
Ron Lancaster anticipating yesterday that there would be a number of balls on the field today in the form of fumbles. Here's McManus looking downfield and overthrowing the intended receiver, Mark Tobert, who was double-teamed. Greg Freer, Bobby Evans, the two guys you were talking about at the outset in coverage.
Well, those are the two guys that are going to have a good game. They're going to have to make sure, especially Frears, that he stays deep enough and be able to close on the football once it's in the air.
Tough team to pass against. The Bombers, #1 fewest passes completed and #1 in the lowest average passes completed during the course of a game. So Winnipeg is stingy in their pass defense. Flag goes down as Darren Flutie was across the line of scrimmage before the snap of the football. Pass incomplete, and Bombers will likely decline the penalty.
Well, that's one of the things that players can have problems, especially the receivers, is when they're headed towards the line of scrimmage and that forward start before the snap is losing track of the line of scrimmage.
Dave Ewell in charge of proceedings this afternoon.
Illegal procedure, Edmonton 82. Penalties declined, 3rd down.
There were two schools of thought about these conditions. The Eskimos have played in these conditions so often in the past. It's their home field, the natural turf. and yet they are the heavy favorites, and other people feel that maybe this field might be an equalizer today.
Well, I actually think it's an equalizer, especially when you look at a quarterback like Ken Austin, and I'll get back to that.
Glenn Harper on third down, punting it away, and this will be Freeman Basinger. He fumbled a football on a kickoff return to open last week's game, but a nice run back there as he's knocked out at the Winnipeg bench. Let's set the Winnipeg offense for you. Dave Van Conant, normally the starting center, has had to move to right tackle because of an injury to Chris Walby, and it'll be interesting to see how the Bombers' offensive line operates without their great veteran Walby this afternoon. Kevin Robson moves into the center spot. Eric Gulliford, probably the most dangerous man as far as receivers goes for Winnipeg. Milt Stiegel back in the lineup. He was hurt in September, first game back. There's big Dean Lytle carrying the football, and he's up across the Winnipeg 50 to the 51. Leroy Blue again in on the tackle.
You know, I was making a point about Ken Austin that this weather might be an advantage for him.
First, we'll get to the defense. Leroy Blue, top Canadian nominee from the Western Division. First time he's had that honor. Here's the top defensive nominee in the CFL from the West, Willie Pless. And Kivas Reed was tied for second in interceptions this year. A couple of good cornerbacks for the Eskimos. Solid defense right through. Second down, and Leroy Blue. And has he made his presence felt in the opening two series of this football game? The great veteran out of Bishops, there is a flag on the field.
For the second time in as many series, Leroy Blue has been able to come across that line of scrimmage untouched and make contact with the ball carrier in the backfield.
Major foul, unnecessary roughness. After the play, Edmonton 26. First down.
Well, the penalty is going against Glenn Rogers. I know why Leroy Blue's fired up, because you picked Mark McLaughlin last week as the top Canadian in the West.
Yeah, I got a lot of flack from Leroy a couple of days ago when I showed up here in town, but Leroy has had an outstanding year. He's had 11 quarterback sacks on the season, and well-deserved of the accolades that he's received here in the offseason.
Now, I knew you'd get that make good in early. Well, that's a costly penalty. Tagged against Glenn Rogers. Winnipeg stays on offense, and over the middle, Dean Lytle with the catch. Larry Ruck is all over him at the 40-yard line of Edmonton.
You had talked about the weather being an equalizer, and I had started a story about Ken Austin. In this type of situation, everyone knows that Ken Austin has lost a lot of velocity off of his footballs. But when you got a situation like this when the ball can be slick, it's really an aid for the receivers for the ball to be feathered in the way that Austin can. It makes it a much more accommodating ball to catch.
Austin hooking up with Lytle out of the backfield, a pickup of 4. In Austin, 4th all-time during the regular season in passing yardage in CFL history. And on 2nd and 6, down he goes. Benny Goods throws him to the turf, and another flag is down. The face mask, and Austin is slow to get up.
And Ken Austin has taken a lot of shots. Benny Goods with tremendous penetration, but when he came through, he got that hand wrapped around the face
Major
mask.
foul, face mask, Edmonton 40. First down.
2 costly penalties. Goods with 12 sacks on the year.
The type of defensive lineman that Benny Goods is that he slides well along the line of scrimmage, and he exploits seams when he finds them. That time he was able to come up inside Robinson, but you saw the hand on the face mask, and Winnipeg keeps the ball marching down to the 25.
Bombers trailing 3-0, but threatening here. In motion, Basinger, the give to Michael Richardson. And off the right side, Richardson may have 3, and already you can tell that the emotions are running high here.
Well, this is a game that you know the loser of this game is going to go home for the rest of the winter, and only the winner will advance. So you have to pull out all stops. You don't leave any emotion in the locker room or on the sideline. You bring it all out on the field.
Richardson, 3 to 4 yards. The ball is spotted at the 22. Boy, what a great front this Eskimo team possesses with Malvin Hunter, Goods, Blue. Derek McCready's had a solid year. Second down 7, Michael Richardson, and he stopped up right at the 20-yard line, and he will be well short of the first down. Benny Goods this time combining with Willie Pless.
You know, Benny Goods has had an outstanding series in this, not just for the face mask. If he hadn't had that, it would be even more. But what he does is that he moves along the line of scrimmage so well, you really don't get a clean hit on him. And when you can't get a square up on a defensive lineman, more often than not, they'll make the play.
So the two major penalties account for 30 yards in the drive. And the Bombers are in field goal position for Troy Westwood. He was 72.5% efficient during the regular season. And the left footer will attempt this one from just outside the 26, and he misses. Gizmo thought about bringing it out, puts the knee down, concedes 1. Troy Westwood would make that on any dry field in any game, but the conditions cost him 3 here in the first quarter.
Watch his plant foot as it's in front of the teeth. Kickers have to keep that foot slightly behind so they can get that leverage and torque follow through.
Remember the 1992 semifinal? There's Cal Murphy. He had a funny comment yesterday. He thought shoes would be a big advantage for the Eskimos in this game. First carry by Blunt to this drive, and he's up to the 40, a pickup of 5.
Blunt to the 40.
And he said that Edmonton probably had an advantage when asked if they'd brought all their shoes for the game. Cal said, yep, we brought as many as we have. Every guy's got a pair.
Well, he didn't want to have to pay cargo on that flight, shipping stuff out, but he made sure this morning that his equipment staff went out and picked up extra shoes so the players would have an opportunity to try different footwear.
Blunt got 5 up to the 40, and it's 2nd and 5 Eskimos. And it's Blunt again, and he'll have the first down, crashing over the Edmonton 45. Eric Blunt, a 1,000-yard runner this year, 1,091 yards. First Eskimo to do that in 5 years.
Well, everyone realizes the heart of the Winnipeg defense is their linebackers. But when you have the offensive lineman for Edmonton with a yard to 2 yards run clear coming out to meet them on this slick field, it's a big advantage for Edmonton's offensive line.
Despite those numbers for Blunt, the Eskimos just ranked 7th in running the football this season. But they are establishing something here early as Blunt again gets the carry up to the 51. Greg Clark with the tackle, and a gain of close to 5 once again.
One of the problems that Winnipeg is faced with this afternoon is their key linebacker, K.D. Williams, facing Eric Blunt. K.D. Williams hyperextended his elbow a couple of weeks ago, and he's playing with a cast on his right elbow. So he's really a one-arm linebacker out there this afternoon.
Yeah, that's the same injury that kept Mike Pringle out of the other semifinal game earlier today, a hyperextended elbow. And here's Tony Burst with a burst, and a saving tackle by Greg Frères. Well, that's the element that Tony Burst gives to this Eskimo offense. An 18-yard pickup. You don't know when he's going to break it, but he usually does it once or twice a game.
And he doesn't know how far he can go. But watch K.D. Williams as he misses the tackle. And a healthy K.D. Williams would make this play, but a one-arm K.D. Williams cannot get off of the offensive lineman, and Tony Burst is open in the middle of the field for an 18-yard run.
He's a load, 6 foot, 238, and they stay on the ground. This is Blunt. Kopke got a hand on him from behind, and it's down to the 39 of Winnipeg as the Eskimos are marching on the ground.
You know, I spoke about how effective Winnipeg linebackers have been over the season, but that's playing on a dry surface with all of that mobility that they have. Now when they have to stop and go and skate across this slippery surface here at Commonwealth, that effectiveness has been taken away.
Second down, McManus will go to the air, looking downfield for Darren Flutie, and he has it. Flutie with the catch at the 12-yard line as he beats Bobby Evans.
And talked about how important it was this afternoon for Bobby Evans to have a good game. They felt, Darren Flutie and Danny McManus, that they could take advantage of some things that Bobby Evans does. One of the things he'll do is stop and try to retrack himself and get going with the receiver, and Darren Flutie kept running on the route. Big play, Edmonton down at the 11.
And Darren Flutie has been a big play man in his playoff career. 5 playoff games, 5 touchdowns, 40 catches, 588 yards, 28 there, and McManus rolling, looking in, so touchdown, Jim Sandusky. Well, they started Jim Sandusky ahead of Shalon Baker. That surprised some people. But Ron Lancaster said, this is Sandusky's time of the year, and this is his kind of weather.
And what you get with Jim Sandusky in the lineup is loads of experience. You talked about Flutie's experience in the playoff, 33 games for Sandusky, but more important, he is the receiver coach in this offense. So he is also an aide to Danny McMahon as far as route adjustments with the receivers.
Fleming adds the extra point. Minute 13 to go in the first quarter at Commonwealth Stadium. An impressive drive by McManus. Most of the damage done through the air after they established the running game. And they cap it with a touchdown pass to Jim Sandusky. Jim Sandusky had just 1 touchdown during the regular season, but has one here in the first quarter of this Western semifinal.
What they recognized, Greg Frears was right in the middle of the screen, and he did not go over and close and help out underneath with Sandusky, and that was a touchdown, clear lane throw for McManus.
Remember the 93 Western Final in the snow at McMahon Stadium? 2 touchdowns for Sandusky with a broken collarbone in the upset victory over the Stampeders on Edmonton's way to the Grey Cup title.
With a 49.
Harold Martin with the stop on the kickoff return.
Well, Chris, here's a picture we captured moments before kickoff today. A member of the Bomber contingent arriving back from Sport Check, the sporting goods store, with 2 pairs, or I should say 2 bags of shoes. You have to admire the Bombers for trying to find the right shoes for traction. Dave Sapunjas, it's our game day analyst. Dave, the reality of the situation is what?
Probably that there's no shoe that is actually going to work out in this field.
So you just have to learn to be fleet-footed.
You have to accept it. You have to just go out and play football and use whatever you have.
Chris?
And a stapler might come in handy. Alan Boyko with the catch. Davis Reed right there to bring him to the turf.
Now, players wouldn't use a stapler, now, would they?
Cal Murphy said yesterday he was going to go over to the Eskimo locker room and see if he could borrow one.
Well, Alan Boyko's a sure-handed receiver, and so you know if you throw the ball to him, he'll make the catch. He's not one that's going to be a threat to break it, but he has sure hands.
And Boyko got 6 on that catch. The ball is at the 47-yard line. First, second down. And the handoff inside. Michael Richardson stopped right up by the veteran Larry Ruck. Back at snowy Commonwealth Stadium with 8 seconds left on the clock in a first quarter dominated by the Edmonton Eskimos. And Bob Cameron in to punt on 3rd down with Williams and Don Blair deep. There's the Giz. And Williams will get a return, slips at his 25 and just holds on to the football. And that is the final play. A 36-yard punt by Cameron, 1 yard on the return. And after 15 minutes of football in this Western semifinal, Cal Murphy's team finds itself down by 9. So the Eskimos will have the football to start the second quarter when we return. Well, Ron Lancaster has to be happy with the way his team is out of the gate this afternoon after a 2-week break.
Well, you know, his offense was, he felt that it might be a little bit sluggish, and especially with the slippery surface they've had here this afternoon. But the passing of Danny McManus has been a key. 49 yards passing in the first quarter.
Two teams with a rich playoff history. The Edmonton Eskimos, for the 11th consecutive year, have a home playoff game. 25 straight years in the playoffs, and Cal Murphy's Winnipeg Blue Bombers have been in the postseason for 17 consecutive years.
Well, two organizations and two great head coaches. Ronnie Lancaster has really developed into a solid head coach here in Edmonton since taking over this regime here, but it's been a solid organization over the years.
Winnipeg dominated this playoff series in the 80s until they moved to the east. These two teams met twice in the 90s in the Grey Cup game. Here's Tony Burst trying the left side. And Angelo Snipes amongst the tacklers there.
One of the things Winnipeg linebackers are going to possibly have to do is play just a bit deeper, because they're getting caught at the line of scrimmage trying to scrape down, and those Edmonton offensive linemen are able to get out on them, and they just can't get any sure footing.
During the break between quarters, the sweepers were out to at least clear the yard markers and the sidelines, but not much else. Second down pass over the middle, and Mark Tobert is unable to hang on to it. And that will bring up third down as Tobert again matched up with Bobby Evans.
And normally a sure-handed receiver, but decent coverage that time by Bobby Evans in the back end to keep Tobert from coming up with that reception down. The punt team is going to come out, and Blake Dermott, who was signed this week just for the playoffs, had retired at the end of last season, is out, and he'll be handling the snapping duties for Edmonton today.
And Dermott snapping it back to Glenn Harper. A rush was on. Harper got it away and off the side of his foot, and it'll go out of bounds at around midfield. In fact, they're going to mark it out at the Eskimo 54-yard line, so just a 24-yard punt. And the Blue Bombers have excellent field position to try and get back in this football game.
Well, Harper might have injured himself on this punt. Watch as he grabs his knee after he kicks the football. Now, this could cause some problems for Edmonton later on in the game, because standing on the sideline, you can expect that that knee will stiffen up.
Harper trying to walk it off, and the Bombers go to work on offense. Out of the shotgun, Austin has some time downfield and almost picked off. Signer Mobley was the man who had a shot at the interception. Milt Stiegel was the intended receiver, and Mobley wishes he had another chance at that one.
Well, Signer Mobley, the Memphis State product, should have had this one. It'll go in the books as a knockdown, but he let that one get to his hands, and he was boasting before the game. His university, Memphis State, beat the University of Tennessee for the first time in the school's history yesterday.
And I bet the conditions weren't like Commonwealth Stadium today. 2nd and 10. Austin throws back, and Michael Richardson has some room. A flag goes down. Richardson tackled by Glenn Rogers Jr., shy of the first down by a couple of yards, but let's await the markers.
I think you got to get 85, Milt Stiegel, for holding on the play. He came in from his receiver's position to get a block on Benny Goods, but the official was right there watching and going to catch him with a flag.
Holding, Winnipeg number 85. Second down repeated.
Well, our game day analyst, Dave Sapunjis, has got a point to make about the predictable pattern that's developed in this game, Dave.
Well, it's basically they're trying to run the ball, which is no secret, but Edmonton sets up the pass by running the ball extremely well, and they're willing to throw it. Austin and Winnipeg have been struggling running the ball. They're now going to the pass, but they're struggling there too.
Yeah, until this last drive, seemingly reluctant to go to the air. Chris?
Bombers have been a team of slow starters throughout the season, faced with a 2nd and 20 here. And Austin looking downfield for Gulliford, who went up to get it, but it falls incomplete as Austin throws into double coverage, and there is another flag on the field.
Well, he's throwing at Cavis Reed, and that's one you just don't want to pick on. Cavis Reed had finished up his undergrad studies at Furman, and he's looking to be a doctor. He just was accepted to the University of Texas Medical School, so he's one of those guys who's pretty astute at picking apart people out there.
Illegal contact on an eligible receiver. Edmonton, 10-yard penalty. Second down repeated.
So it'll be 2nd and 10, and Eskimo penalties have been the best offense for Kent Austin so far in this game. I mentioned the slow starts. The Bombers have been outscored in the first half of games this year, 305 to 174, and particularly Cal Murphy's team's been in a hole in the second quarter. Outscored almost 2-1 in the second quarter of games, including the matchup against Edmonton. Here's Austin, finds Boyko. It's a first down and more as Alan Boyko is inside the 35. Leroy Blue got a hit on Austin, but Austin hooks up with Boyko.
Over the years with Kent Austin, where he's really been effective is throwing over the middle. If you recall, when he was in Saskatchewan, he had Ray Elgard and Jeff Verholm, two great slots for years. This time, Alan Boyko coming over the middle. Found that open spot in the zone. First down, Winnipeg.
The ball is at the Eskimo 33. First down, Bombers. Richardson. And he's hit behind the line of scrimmage. And once again, Leroy Blue was in there, Malvin Hunter, and, well, the entire defense congregating around Michael Richardson. In case you joined us late earlier today at Olympic Stadium, the Alouettes prevailing over the Tiger Cats. So it's a Montreal-Toronto Eastern final next Sunday. Tracy Ham against Doug Flutie. Austin, 2nd and 12. Good time, and throwing incomplete, looking for Stiegel, who stretched out.
One of the problems in weather conditions like this for a quarterback is when you're trying to throw the ball towards the boundary. It's much more difficult for your receiver to break out that direction than it is to keep running and throw it right over the middle.
So third down. The ball at the 35-yard line, so this would be a 42-yard attempt for Troy Westwood.
Now, the last time Westwood attempted a field goal, he overstrided trying to maintain his balance. Where will that plant foot be this time?
Over 1,000 points in his CFL career. Cameron the holder, and this one is going to bounce into the end zone. Williams picks it up, and he's going to run it out. Look out. That open side closed up by Dean Lytle, and Gizmo is stopped up at the 20-yard line. But this field has been hazardous for Troy Westwood in the opening half of the Western Semi. The loneliness of the long-distance kicker, Troy Westwood, by himself with his thoughts after 2 misses, and he's having a lot of trouble with this turf.
He just hasn't been able to stride through on the football, and that's causing all of his problems. He's trying to maintain his footing on the follow-through.
A usually reliable place kicker. And the Eskimos take over. Ball on their own 22. And McManus with some time, throwing the out. First time he's looked at Eddie Brown today, and good coverage provided by Shannon Garrett.
Well, Eddie Brown is that game-breaking type of receiver, a lot of speed. So if you can get Eddie on a go route, he'll be very effective. The underneath routes, you have to leave those to Tobert and Flutie.
Well, Brown, no question about it, one of the real concerns for Winnipeg today. Flutie and Brown, 2 and 3 in the league in receiving this season. 2nd and 10. And they'll try it on the ground with Blunt. Broke the first tackle and surges ahead to near the 30-yard line. And that'll be close to a first before Colin Scribner finally wrapped him up. And this will depend on the placement. They're moving the chains. First down.
The big guys up front for Edmonton are getting the job done on the ground. That time they ran a counter, and Blunt was able to pop it through and pick up the first down.
Well, the shoes are late arriving here, but they're making adjustments as the game goes on. I wonder if there's one to fit Troy Westwood's plant foot. Go back to Blunt again as the Eskimos try and chew up some running yardage.
47.
Ron Lancaster saying yesterday that the running game has not been our strength this year, but we want to establish the line of scrimmage in this game.
Well, in establishing the line of scrimmage, you're going to create 2 situations. You're going to keep the ball away from Winnipeg's offense. Ken Austin is going to get cold sitting on the sideline.
2nd and 6, and out of the shotgun, McManus throwing over the middle, and there's a completion to Jim Sandusky. He's a remarkable story at 35 years of age, and as you mentioned earlier, he's a coach as much as a receiver on this team.
And I'll tell you what happened is that he took the trick formation right. He brought himself inside to the slot. Normally he's the wideout, but he saw the adjustment in the coverage in the secondary, knew that he could get inside. Snipes couldn't get any pressure on the quarterback, and McManus threw a strike.
Ball up at the Edmonton 49, a first down. The fake to burst. McManus gets outside, and Eddie Brown's wide open. And Brown is going to score. Eddie Brown, one man could catch him. Touchdown, fumble in the end zone. Winnipeg's on it. Eddie Brown dropped the ball before he crossed the line, and Greg Frères has the turnover for Winnipeg. How do you like that?
Gerald Vaughn, great hustle by the Winnipeg defensive back to close about 60 yards on Eddie Brown and track him down and bat the ball out. Eddie Brown tried to go across the end zone line nonchalant, and Vaughn, with great hustle, was able to knock it out to preserve the non-score for Edmonton.
What an enormous turnover. Eddie Brown going in for an apparent touchdown of 60 yards, but Gerald Vaughn catches him from behind and forces the turnover.
Well, Ronnie Lancaster made a great point yesterday. He said after 3 minutes, this game would come down between talent and execution. You saw the talent of Gerald Vaughn and the non-execution by Eddie Brown finishing out the play.
An old teammate of Dave Sapunja's, Gerald Vaughn, and there is Kent Austin. Sack. Errol Martin was there, and Leroy Blue in the neighborhood.
Is there a better pass rushing group in the CFL than the Edmonton Eskimos? They come at you from so many different angles. You really can't get a key. This is not a team with one designated pass rusher. This is a team with 3 or 4.
Number 1 in the league in sacking the quarterback with 70 on the year, and the Bombers gave up 55. 2nd and 18 for Austin. Here comes Blue again. Down he goes. Flag is down after Blue took down Austin.
But Leroy Blue has a point to make this afternoon. I think he is trying to solidify that
Holding, Winnipeg number 57.
That most outstanding Canadian award should go to him once that award that presentation is made in Hamilton in another week or so. But Leroy Blue came off the corner, basically untouched, and tracked down Ken Austin. Another outstanding play here in the first half by Leroy Blue.
There is the sack pack for Edmonton. Big numbers put up. Remember, Blue had 11, but he only played 14 games.
Went out with a few injuries, but when he's in the lineup, he's effective on every play.
Cameron standing in his end zone. Cameron with the punt, which will bounce to Williams. Here's Gizmo, breaks the first surge, look out! Cameron will try and stop him, and he's caught from behind. That's another great saving tackle by Shannon Garrett. But Gizmo has the Eskimos in business when we come back. Greatest return man in CFL history takes one 49 yards for the Eskimos. They've got a first down at the Winnipeg 6.
You know, there's been so much made of footwear, but not only footwear, but foot position, running position. You have to be able to break down. You have to come under control. As you see, Kevin Robinson did not do that. Now, he is the hard contained man where he has to force Williams to make a decision. When he went down, all he had to do was take it right back up the middle, down to the 6-yard line.
Eskimos have focused on their play in the red zone in the last 2 weeks, trying to improve their efficiency. First down, Blunt stopped behind the line of scrimmage, but Blunt bounces off and scores. Touchdown, Eric Blunt.
And back back-to-back plays where we saw a Winnipeg Blue Bomber not breaking down to make the tackle. Greg Clark came through. He had a clean shot on Eric Blunt, but he forgot to break down and wrap up. Blunt bounced into the corner, in for 6. Touchdown, Edmonton.
You know, I was talking to Dave Sapunjas about this before the game, and he suggested that as an offensive player, he felt it was tougher for the defensive players to really wrap and make the tackles, and we're seeing evidence of that in this first half.
Well, you're talking about defensive linemen not wanting to get their hands wet in the snow. Your hands get a little chilly and frigid, and so it becomes a little more difficult to wrap up. But Eric Blunt did a great job of eluding Greg Clark, normally a sure tackler, but watches the penetration, and Blunt is able to bounce it. That's what the smaller guys have been able to do this afternoon with that low center of gravity and that low balance, get down low in that squat and explode out of it. You get a good look at him turning the corner. Now that's speed and determination. That's athleticism, and Ronnie Lancaster spoke about it. After 3 minutes into the game, the great athletes would show.
Well, the Eskimos are threatening to run away from the Bombers, and already Reggie Slack is starting to warm up on the sidelines. The Eskimos, I mentioned, were focusing on their efficiency in the red zone, and twice down there they've been able to put it into the end zone. A touchdown pass to Sandusky, and there was the run by Blunt. One of the up men, Perry Van Hofwegen, with the return for Winnipeg. And Reggie Slack will come in. We've seen him in relief a number of times this year, and his best game was against the Edmonton Eskimos. He had 298 yards passing in Winnipeg's victory over Edmonton here at Commonwealth Stadium back in July. Big question here is, how well can he throw the football after suffering a broken bone on the tip of his thumb a month ago? He'll give it to Richardson, and Michael Richardson to the 54 of Winnipeg, and it's a short pickup, and they haven't been able to run against Edmonton so far.
And you talked about how well will he be able to grip the football, and that thumb is the guide finger on the hand. You have to have that underneath to push the ball down the field, but you didn't bring Reggie Slack in the game just to hand off to Michael Richardson, because you could have left Ken Austin in and accomplished that same feat.
It's second down. Edmonton so far, and this one gets by Slack, and he'll just have to cover it back near the 35. So it's all unraveling here for the Bombers in the second quarter.
Now you got to go back and look at the changes that Winnipeg made prior to the game. Kevin Robson is in at center. Dave Von Konen is out at tackle, the normal starting center for Winnipeg. He's not accustomed to snapping in the shotgun, and the ball never got to his quarterback.
Melvin Hunter made sure Slack wasn't going anywhere. And Austin and Slack will confer. Robson, low snap, and Cameron with a good punt. Let's find out what Gizmo does this time. Finds another seam. Look out. Now he's just got to get upfield. Breaks another tackle over Cameron, and this time Gerald Vaughn catches him from behind. Well, it's turning into the Gizmo show. For Gizmo Williams.
In the history of professional football, has there ever been a more exciting individual? Henry Williams. He missed the first 11 games of this season, but in the last 7, he accumulated over 1,000 yards in kick returns. He is an outstanding addition to this Edmonton offense and special team attack.
He has 119 punt return yards in this second quarter. And the Eskimos threaten again. Here's McManus. Looked one way, now the other. And into the end zone, Blunt. Touchdown.
McManus the other day in the locker room, and Danny McManus has been one to take all the blame when things haven't gone well with his team. But when the team has done well, he has been one to give accolades to his teammates. I think it's time now that Danny McManus receives some of the accolades for what he's done here in the first half of this game.
While he continues his playoff excellence, Gizmo Williams with 2 brilliant punt returns. Eric Blunt caps them both, and McManus is holding a hot hand as the Eskimos are out in front 24-1.
But the special teams have given him great field position, but Danny McManus, you talk about his playoff promise when he gets an opportunity to get on the field at this time of the year, is that he bought the extra time getting outside to contain, and that's one of the things Winnipeg hasn't been able to do, is keep him in the pocket, and Blunt seeped into the end zone for the catch. Eddie Brown was able to occupy 2 defenders on this play in the back of the end zone, and that left K.D. Williams one-on-one, who was on an island and lost on the play.
Was he ever? He goes too far back to handle Blunt, and McManus would have walked in himself.
But that's just great execution by McManus, and also with having Jim Sandusky in the lineup, able to redirect receivers through their routes, helping out McManus, so you basically have a quarterback and a coach on the field at the same time.
Well, it has clearly been Eskimo weather. Eric Gulliford upended at the 45. Darian Hagan took the feet out from under Gulliford. There is a flag down. Well, the Blue Bombers made it quite clear from the outset that they had to stay close early, had to make good things happen in the early portion of the game. This is not an offense that's tailor-made for dramatic comebacks.
Major foul, face mask, Edmonton 34, first down.
Well, Chris and James, Dave Sapunjas and I have made several points about traction on this field, how difficult it is to find it. But Dave Sapunjas, look at the Giz here. He's just got a feeling for it.
Yeah, it looks like there's no traction problem for Giz. He's running fairly straight, making some slow turns here, but he's running straight up, running extremely well, and so far it's the Giz show, accounting for 14 points.
Winnipeg knew as a result of their last regular season game in which the Giz broke one on them there that they had to contain him. No secret as to what he's doing. They just can't stop him.
He had so much momentum on that diagonal run, I wasn't sure he could right himself and turn it upfield, but Gizmo has tamed the turf here at Commonwealth this afternoon. Basinger was the intended receiver, incomplete. Can the Bombers get anything going here with Reggie Slack?
Oh, you know, it's going to be very difficult. Reggie had to come off the bench, and if you look at that ball that Reggie is throwing, he's not getting any pressure on the ball from his thumb. That's why it's wobbling. But to go back to Gizmo, saw Gizmo in the locker room, and what Gizmo had done, probably the reason why he's getting better traction than anyone else is he took out a pair of shoes he brought to Edmonton in 1987. He said, this is my safety net on weather days like this, and it's paid off for him in huge dividends.
2nd and 10. Slack has time. He's looking deep, and the intended receiver Gulliford was held up a little in a battle with Malcolm Frank, and the ball incomplete. So prophetic words yesterday from Cal Murphy, who said the shoe selection may be a decisive factor in this game, but clearly the Eskimos more familiar with the turf, the environment, and Cal wanted a penalty on that last play as his receiver got tangled with Frank.
Well, it's hard for Cal to stay healthy as we get a look at a lot of the different footwear they have on that Winnipeg sideline, and nothing seemed to help thus far.
I'm telling you, Staples.
Staples. Is that legal, though?
Gizmo Williams is not back this time. He's going to take a break, and Don Blair, who ran one back against the Bombers, nailed by K.D. Williams. Good hit by Williams on the outstanding Canadian rookie. And there's a timeout on the field. 24-1, Eskimos. There's Wade Miller, one of the special team stars for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers.
And he's the leading tackler for this team with 26 tackles coming in. So you have to give a player like that special attention. And you see Edmonton double teaming Wade all the way down the field. They're putting Dixon on top of him right there, and he's taking a slide.
And Jed Roberts, one of the key special teams men for the Edmonton Eskimos.
It's not only returns, but it's blocking that makes great returns possible.
McManus and the Eskimos start from their 22. Their last two scoring drives took 36 and 35 seconds respectively.
Maybe they want to get the offense back on the field and get a little rhythm going with them, because Gizmo has given them such great field position, but that's a tribute to the work ethic of this Edmonton Eskimo organization. You have to play all phases, and especially when you have bad weather and playoff time, your special teams play such a huge role.
Well, Danny McManus has been outstanding so far in adverse conditions. 2nd and 8, and Sandusky stretched out, couldn't bring it in. Incomplete. Gerald Bond was the closest bomber to Sandusky.
Winnipeg has not been able to put any pressure at all on Danny McManus. He sit back in that pocket 4 to 5 seconds trying to find an open receiver. They're going to have to do something at halftime about their footwear, because they just haven't touched Danny McManus all afternoon.
2:08 to go in this opening half, and the Bombers need something good to happen before they head to the locker room. Eric Gulliford, 5th in all-purpose yards this year. He's a big play guy. Let's see if he can make something happen. Basinger waves him off, and Freeman Basinger stopped up at the 50. I don't know about that. I think Cal Murphy would like the ball in Gulliford's hands.
Cup plus oil, lube, and filter, tire rotation, and a free jug of washer fluid, all for just $24.99. Only at Canadian Tire.
Coming up on our halftime report from Commonwealth Stadium today, Dave Sapungis, our game day analyst, and I will talk about the first half. We'll go back to Montreal for a report on Montreal's victory over Hamilton in the East semifinal, and providing we're able to delay the start of the third quarter, Kristen James might just have time enough for all the Eskimo highlights from this first half.
Yes, this chilly Commonwealth crowd has been warmed by a number of big plays for the Eskimos, and can you imagine if Eddie Brown had got his into the end zone?
Well, I think there's two players that have really showed themselves well there in the first half of Edmonton. That's Henry Williams and Eric Blunt. They've played two outstanding roles. Great field position provided for the offense by Williams, and Eric Blunt able to churn up the yardage on the ground.
2nd and 10 for the Bombers from their own 50. And Slack 0 for 3 since relieving Ken Austin. Here comes the rush, and Reggie is going down. Larry Ruck from the middle linebacker position, blitzing, gets to Reggie Slack.
You know, maybe Cal Murphy should send someone over to the Edmonton sideline and find out what type of shoes they're wearing, because they haven't had any problem with traction. That is the Eskimos, and granted, they're here and they play on the natural surface all year long, but Winnipeg is just completely unsure of their footing this afternoon.
We kid our colleague Dan Kepley about the 77 Grey Cup loss at Olympic Stadium, where the Eskimos were skating and the Alouettes had the staples in the shoes and ran up the score, and well, the Eskimos have not been beaten by footwear ever since.
Well, I think Dwayne Mandrusiak, the equipment manager for the Edmonton Eskimos, could be getting a game ball after this game if the score continues as is.
24-1, 150 to play, and Gizmo's back, and the fans are chanting his name. They'll kick away from Gizmo, and Don Blair, and if he beat that initial tackle, he would have gone straight down the sidelines. That was Wade Miller, though. We watched him earlier, and this time Miller beat the double team and got downfield.
He's a great hustler on the specialty teams. His dad played for years in the CFL, and Wade has become one of the better special team players in the CFL. Doug Hocking is one of the guys that he works with on a daily basis, perfecting their techniques getting off the ball.
He's 5'9", 215 pounds, a graduate of the University of Manitoba.
Nickname Woody.
So the Eskimos have the ball at their own 51. Can they do any more damage before the half is done? Here it's out in the flat. Tony Burse has some room, and he'll run right over Bobby Evans, and he's inside the Winnipeg 40.
I think Tony Burse actually lost sight of where he was on that play.
21 yards for Burst.
Watch as Burst catches the ball and he tries to square up to go upfield. He thinks he's at the sideline, but if he had just took off and run, he probably would have picked up another 15, 20 yards.
Tough to tell with the snow on the field. The markings aren't that clear. First down, Eskimos. Blunt. And Blunt down inside the 35. Tobert was coming around as if they had a reverse plan, might be setting something up. Clemens the tackle on Blunt.
You got to think about Blunt playing in this weather. Now, he played college football at North Carolina, so he didn't get too many snowy days when he was running the football. But the low center of gravity that I spoke about earlier, keeping your legs up underneath you, have allowed him to pick up positive yardage on the ground.
Second down for the Eskimos. They need 5. McManus over the middle. There's Darren Flutie. Touchdown, Edmonton. Darren Flutie's playoff magic continues, and Danny McManus has his 3rd touchdown pass of the afternoon.
Well, they talked about it in opening that Winnipeg was going to have to protect against the middle of the field. Frears and Evans were going to have to come up and make plays. Danny McManus felt that he would have an opportunity within that 20-yard window, and he hit Flutie with the perfect strike. Hey, let's get a record!
Well, one Flutie is in the Eastern Final against Montreal, and the other Flutie looks like he's headed to Calgary for the West Final, as the Eskimos have a 30-point lead, and our first half not done in Edmonton.
Well, this is the team right here in the middle of the field. This is what Danny McManus is looking at. There is no safety back there, and when you don't have a safety and you can run that deep crossing route as he did with Flutie, it's wide open if he can make the catch and break that initial tackle.
Eskimos doing this against the 3rd best passing defense in the CFL this year.
Well, they're doing it against the 3rd best passing defense, but there's no pass rush to help out the secondary or the linebackers. The linebackers haven't been able to get back in their drops.
Brittany, Brett, Jenny, how you doing?
And Darren Flutie continues to put up those marvelous numbers in the playoffs.
That was a long drive for the Eskimos, 48 seconds. They've had 2 shorter than that for touchdown.
Offensive players got a little winded on that drive.
Well, the hole is even deeper. Here's Gulliford up to the 45. Jay Hamilton, Jed Roberts in on the tackle.
Winnipeg has not been able to get anything going with either quarterback. Reggie Slack is going to stay on the bench, looks like, or he's going to get some late instruction from Cal Murphy, and then he's going to come in. But you have to worry about how effective his hand is going to be in this cold weather with that bad thumb. That football gets a little bit slick, and he might not be able to put enough pressure to get good velocity on the ball and good consistent passes.
Did my medical research this week. The injury is a cracked distal phalanx. There you go.
Bad thumb.
Bad thumb.
All right.
Net offense. Well, that's the whole story. Not the whole story. Gizmo Williams has written a little bit of this first half script.
But the last time that these two teams met, that was part of the script also. Don Blair and Gizmo Williams both returned punts for touchdowns to blow that game wide open. Edmonton stayed close with it. Winnipeg stayed close with their defense, but the special teams were the decisive factor.
2nd and a yard. And this time Richardson running hard off the left side. It has 6. Melvin Hunter with the tackle. We have dispelled a couple of theories in this first half. Number 1, that the weather would be a great equalizer for Cal Murphy this afternoon. And number 2, that Danny McManus and the Eskimo offense would be slowed in this first half because of 2 weeks off.
Well, it's hard to be slowed when you get the ball in the red zone to start an offensive series.
15 seconds to go in this first half. And Reggie Slack has Boyko open, and Alan Boyko will get it out of bounds. 8 seconds remaining on the clock. And there's a flag on the play. Leroy Blue had jumped offside, but they'll take the 21-yard pickup, and we've got an injured Winnipeg Blue Bomber back at the line of scrimmage. That's Bobby Pandelides.
And they're already thin.
Edmonton 89. Penalties decline. First down.
They're already thin on the offensive line, and so Joe Smiro will have to come into the game for Pandelides on the play. He was just signed this week after the Walby injury, but Leroy Blue is going to have to lose one of those bonus points that he's been accumulating here in the first half.
Timeout on the field in the dying seconds of the first half with the Eskimos in front.
Back at Commonwealth Stadium, Bobby Pandelides down for the Bombers as they look him over. Dave Sapunjas with a comment now on what the Bombers might be able to do if they have time for 2 more plays in this half, Dave.
Well, they're either going to go for a long pass in the end zone on one play or try to set up a field goal with a quick pass to the sidelines. In any way, they are being beaten in every facet of the game. They got to score some points just to get a little pride going into the locker room.
Yeah, they need a positive sign in the worst way, don't they?
Absolutely.
Chris?
Well, Cal Murphy has seen everything come undone in this first half. I mentioned at the outset, the second quarter has been a nightmare for Murphy all year long. Funny that some of those stats unravel like that, but they have been thoroughly dominated. It was 10-1 after 15 minutes, and the Eskimos have added 3 touchdowns since.
Well, you get a good look at Pandelides right here as he comes out to cut Leroy Blue. I think what happened is that he caught a knee in the lower back as he was trying to go down on Blue, and that seems to be what he's having problems with going off the field with his lower back area. So they're going to have to make 3 changes in the offensive line right now. Joe Smiro is going to come in at right tackle, so they'll move Kevin Robson out to right guard and move Dave Van Conant back in the center. So you got a 3-for-1, which could cause some blocking problems in the scheme, and they haven't been that effective here in the first half already.
From bad to worse so far, but as Scott and Dave alluded to, a chance to at least make something positive happen before the end of the half. They do have a timeout left. Slack standing in the pocket. Boyko over the middle. They may run out of time. Boyko down with 1 second. Well, let's see. The clock's run out. And the Bombers will argue that the clock was allowed to run out. There was 1 second left up when Boyko hit the turf. But that will do it in a first half where nothing went right for Cal Murphy's Bombers.
30 minutes complete in the West semifinal here at Commonwealth Stadium in Edmonton. The Eskimos leading by a bushel and then some. Welcome to our halftime report. Calgary's Dave Sapunjas is our game day analyst. And Dave, awfully hard not to think about a meeting with Edmonton in the West final next week, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Edmonton is playing so well, and it looks like they're going to dominate right through this whole game. You never know what's going to happen, of course. Winnipeg could come out and make things happen, but right now I have to think that we're going to be playing Edmonton, and it'll be a great match.
Almost shot out of the booth here. Yeah, and that wasn't from Danny McManus. Traction, a major story in this game. The Bombers just cannot get any, but the Eskimos, and in particular Gizmo Williams and Eric Blunt, been able to remain upright long enough to do some serious damage.
It is a shoe issue, and I think Edmonton obviously has a bunch of pair of shoes that they have that they've had over years that they can pull out. And here's a great play that just an easy little run by Eric Blunt. Winnipeg trying to make the hand tackles. He just runs to the end zone and scores.
And then Darren Flutie on a 51-yard scoring play. You offered the theory earlier in the day, Dave, that he could be a star in this game.
Well, Darren's such a smart player and an experienced player, and he's played well in this type of weather in the past. That was just a simple slant pattern. McManus throwing the ball out in front of him going and getting it, taking it to the end zone.
All right, so Winnipeg and Edmonton are in the process of deciding who goes to the West Division final. Earlier today, the East Division final field was set. Let's go back to Montreal and hear from Mark Lee.
Scott, who would have thought 2 teams that averaged 71 points per game during the regular season would end up in a defensive struggle in the playoffs? But that's what happened. 11 points, all from the kickers in the first half before Tracy Ham got on track. This is the third quarter. Chris Armstrong is open, and Ham finds him for a touchdown that makes it 14-4 Montreal. Then Anthony Cavillo, plagued by pressure and some ill-timed passes, goes deep on a drive that was threatening. Misjudging the pass route was Earl Winfield, and Charles Gordon makes the interception, 1 of 4 on Cavillo on the day. Then in the fourth quarter, Montreal in deep. Ham, with all kinds of time in the pocket, finds Dennis Montana on a ball that was intended for Chris Armstrong. Montana with concentration, holding on, and it was 21-11 Montreal, and this game was over. Tracy Ham was running for his life in that first half, sacked 4 times, no touchdown passes. In the second half, Tracy, 2 TD passes. Tell me about the adjustments.
Well, first, I just want to give honor to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, who's first in my life. It was a game of adjustments. They made some different adjustments to us. It was bringing the blitz weak, and we was reading the blitz strong. So they did some different things. It was a good ball game, man. We just had to make some adjustments at halftime. We were able to pick that up, and then I could look downfield and throw the ball. Because we were getting people open, I just wasn't having time to throw the ball downfield.
Hey, who would have thought this would have been a defensive struggle based on your season series?
I'm so glad it was. I think that, you know, a defensive struggle is, you always get those in the playoff. Very seldom or very unlikely you're going to get blowouts, because it's such a different atmosphere in the playoff, and everybody seemed to raise their level of play, and Hamilton defense did a good job, and our defense, you know, I'm really proud of those guys because they really made a statement today.
And you guys made a shrewd call today, resting the injured Mike Pringle. Now you'll have him rested and ready coming off injury for the Eastern Final.
Well, believe me, that was a call that we had to make because Mike certainly couldn't play, and that's why he didn't play.
All right, Tracy, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Tracy Ham and the Montreal Alouettes defeating the Tiger Cats 22-11 this afternoon. They're going to the East Final for the first time since 1985. That's the story from Montreal. Now back to you, Scott, in Edmonton.
Mark, thank you. So that's a fitting East Division final. Montreal and Toronto, the 2 best teams in the East. A week today at Skydome. There should be a run on tickets for this game, although there are plenty still available. Here, it's the Eskimos by 30 at the half. We'll be back. Light snow falling now in Edmonton at the half of this West semifinal. Here's our broadcast position at the south end of Commonwealth Stadium. And hey, look, kids, we live in a beer can, but this booth has got everything except plumbing. Eskimos favored heading into the West semifinal, and they certainly have justified that role. Back with you now in Edmonton as we continue with our halftime report. Chris and James standing by with some first half analysis, and it's pretty simple, really. Everything's gone right for the Eskimos, Chris.
Absolutely, Scott. If this was a heavyweight title fight like Holyfield-Tyson, they'd stopped it by now. It was clearly one-sided, and the knockout blows really were provided by Gizmo Williams.
Well, special teams play such an important role when it comes down to the playoffs, to bad weather, be able to get offense, great field position. 124
yards in the first half for Gizmo. He's just 34 yards from becoming the all-time punt return leader in the CFL playoffs, ahead of an old Eskimo, Rolly Miles.
Well, Henry Williams does such a great job of catching the ball, and he likes to go straight up the field. And what that allows is for players to stay on their block. He's not going to change directions a lot, and he's off to the races when he's in the open field.
He had a 70-yarder and stopped from behind by Shannon Garrett. He also had a 49-yard punt return. So Gizmo's been a big story, and the fans were certainly on their feet saluting his efforts in the first half.
And it's just flat-out speed with Gizmo Williams. He's going to get to the corner, and he turns upfield, and he's off to the races. He's wearing a pair of shoes that he's brought out from his 1987 collection, and he's gotten great traction from him this afternoon.
Thing I don't understand is why Cal Murphy and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers are buying shoes a couple of hours before the game. They knew it was snowing yesterday. They knew there wasn't a tarp on the field. Cal Murphy used to coach here. He's had many afternoons on the frozen tundra, so it's a bit surprising that they'd be caught so badly with their footwear this afternoon. Scott?
All right, Chris, the Eskimos lost to Winnipeg in 3 straight West semifinals from 83 through to 85. This is their first semifinal meeting of the 90s, and the Giz and his mates have decided not to follow the form chart of the 80s. Well, how do you like this? The Sapunges brothers got the tickets that Dave left for them. Dave Sapunges, our game day analyst in this West semifinal. David, adjustments are required by the Bombers in this second half, to say the least. What, if any, can they make that'll help?
Well, I think they've made one. They're not kicking to the Giz anymore, but they're going to have to take some chances. They're going to have to throw some long balls and probably get away from the running game and start throwing the ball a lot more.
We were just told the referee went over and had a look at the bottom of Gizmo's shoes. Of course, staples are illegal. I don't know if that's what he was checking for, and apparently he's changed his shoes heading into the second half, but he really was a force in the first half, and they've got to find a way to stop him in the second.
Absolutely, and I think one of the ways is you just don't kick the ball to him, which they've started to do, but he's changed his shoes, and those are legal pair. I'm sure he had a legal pair on the first half.
Dave, a quick comment on the weather. We offered the theory earlier in the day that this could be the equalizer, but the reality when you think about it is the Eskimos love these kinds of conditions, and visiting teams when they come to Commonwealth worry about this weather.
We have always struggled here. We lost 2 games here against Edmonton, and this field is always conducive to the Eskimos, and thank God that next week we're playing in McMahon Stadium, Calgary.
And most likely against the Eskimos, barring divine intervention for the Bombers here in the second half, and now we're set for the final 30 minutes of regulation time. Here are Chris and James.
Sean Fleming getting set to kick it off, and the Bombers will get the football to start this second half. And based on what we have seen activity-wise at the Bomber bench, it will be Reggie Slack to come in as the ball is kicked out of bounds. Not a deep kick, and a late flag. Not sure if that is just to signify the ball out of bounds or an extra hit over there. Somebody's been shaken up.
I think it's the hit, the ball going out of bounds, but look like Darian Hagan is still down. Make that Reggie Pleasant. He's up now. Took a tremendous shot in going after that football on the sideline.
And there will be an option if it is just the ball out of bounds for the Bombers to take it outside the 35 or get them to kick it off again.
Well, it was Reggie Pleasant. He took a shot from Eric Gulliford, but if the Bombers are smart here, they'll take the ball and not worry about trying to chance another kickoff. With these terrible field conditions, you want to handle the ball at least as many times as possible.
Don't know if you've ever been in a position of being down.
Illegal kickoff. Edmonton number 11. Penalties declined. First down.
They will take the ball where you anticipated they would, but down 30 at the half in a playoff game with the season on the line. How do you get up for the second half?
Well, it's really not much you can do, but there's one constant. If you think about Reggie Slack, last year he set a CFL record for attempts in the game. He threw the ball 51 times versus Baltimore, so he has the ability to put it in the air.
And he'll go right to work. Reggie Slack looking for Boyko, and Boyko has been their most reliable receiver so far. That's his 5th catch of the game, and a first down to start it off.
Well, when you look at the first half stats, total domination by Edmonton, net yards 273, but the return yards by Gizmo Williams and Don Blair, 168 yards of field position for Edmonton's offense.
That's 2.5 times what Winnipeg was able to muster offensively in the first half. They do start with a first down, and now Slack back to the air, and this one almost picked off. Malcolm Frank couldn't squeeze it. He's had an outstanding year on the corner for the Eskimos, but strangely enough, no interceptions.
He's thrown the goose egg out there. One of the things about that, though, is that he's such a good cover man, and he breaks on the ball. And he has 5 knockdowns on the season, but he hasn't come up with any interceptions, but they don't pick on him that often either. You see the bad footing by Slack in the pocket, and that's a problem. No follow-through.
Ball at the Winnipeg 51, 2nd and 10. Here comes the rush. Slack got away, but the pass falls incomplete. He dodged Derek McCready, and then he was nailed in the act of throwing.
And you know, Derek McCready's a very interesting story. Talking to players in the locker room, who was the most surprising player on their defense, and it was a hand-down vote for Derek McCready. They've been really impressed with his work ethic coming in. He's had an injury-plagued career, but he stepped into this defense, and he's blended right in, and he's been a great asset for Edmonton this season.
So the Eskimos force the Bombers to punt. And Cameron just got it away. Ball bouncing down there, and Blair alertly gets on it to get the no yards call. Gerald Bond was in the vicinity. 33-yard punt by Cameron.
Reggie Slack on the sideline. He hasn't been able to stay
No yards. Winnipeg 13. First down.
And get things going for Winnipeg on any long march, and that's something that their offense has to find a way to do. Pick up 3 or 4 first downs in a drive.
Well, Slack's counterpart, Danny McManus, has been splendid this afternoon. Be interesting interesting to see if they just try and grind it out here on the ground in the second half. It was a priority for them. Blunt, the ball carrier, and John Trapke with the tackle up at the 35. Gain of 4 to 5 yards for Eric Blunt.
Well, this is a perfect opportunity for them to really establish their run. When you look at the Winnipeg linebackers, they've been totally ineffective this game. K.D. Williams had 102 tackles coming into this game. He has the bad forearm. Greg Clark is coming off a devastating hamstring injury, so his mobility is questionable.
Blunt had 63 yards rushing in the first half. It's 2nd and 6, and McManus going outside, and the sure-handed Darren Flutie makes another catch, and another Eskimo first down.
You know, he just rises to the occasion this time of the year. He really loves the cold weather and to play with when the game is on the line. And when you're playing for all the marbles, Darren Flutie has been able to take his game over 140 yards on average the last 3 playoff games.
Darren Flutie needs one more 100-yard game in the playoffs to tie Rolly Miles and Brian Kelly for a record in that department. Here's Tony Burse, and Burse has been effective on the ground today. K.D. Williams finally brings the big fullback down.
When you want to talk about being effective, you got to look at the big 5 guys up front for Edmonton. They're coming off the ball, they're keeping their feet, they're staying in their blocks, and that is the key. These Winnipeg defenders have not been able to shed these offensive linemen for Edmonton, and so they're 6 and 7 yards on every run.
Ball at the Eskimo 52. It's 2nd and 2. And it's Burst again over midfield, and that'll move the chains.
What this is doing right now with this running game is that it's setting up Danny McManus, so when he does want to pass the football, is that this Winnipeg defensive line cannot get off the ball and get a pass rush on him because they have to respect the run of Edmonton. You see the trouble at Snipes. Snipes led the CFL in sacks with 15 this season. He hasn't even been able to get across the line of scrimmage this afternoon.
First down, McManus flipping it out over the head of Burse. Incomplete.
And what Danny is telling Burse, you got to keep running, big guy, because I'm expecting you to go and I'm leading you on the play. You can't pull up short.
This early in the season, Ron Lancaster was saying that Danny McManus, a very quiet guy. You talked about the fact he takes everything on himself. But it took a while for the offense to adjust to a guy who was not a hauler guy, not a field general in the way a Ron Lancaster was in his career. Most quarterbacks are. McManus very low key, but once everybody got accustomed to McManus, he's a guy that offenses love to play for. Here's Eddie Brown, and he dodges a tackle and up the sidelines for 5 more. But just back on to McManus, that's why BC Lions seemed to always respond when he came in at quarterback in that great playoff run 2 years ago.
He's a guy who likes to give the accolades to his teammates, but he made a great point about his and Ronnie Lancaster's relationship. He said Ronnie is the first coach that he's ever had to play the same position that he's playing. So he has a better perspective of what Danny is looking at in the type of situations. Even when Danny has to throw an interception, his other coaches have not been through that scenario.
1st and 10 Eskimos now at the Winnipeg 42. And McManus straight back has Flutie, who is coming around on a reverse. The ball delivered incomplete.
Right now, Edmonton's offense has this Winnipeg defense exactly where they want them. They've mixed the run and the pass very well. As you see Danny McManus making light of the situation. I should have had you. That's one that got away. But Danny McManus is enjoying himself. His offense has rallied around him. They've responded to his play calling, and he's been very effective.
Tony Hill and the Bomber defense playing for some pride right now as they dig in on 2nd and 10 from the Bomber 42. McManus guns it. Eddie Brown is open. Jason Mallett trying to wrestle him down, but Eddie Brown with another big catch. Went for 61 yards earlier, 34 on that pickup. up, and Brown is over 100 yards for the 6th time in 96.
And Chris, all this was set up by the running of the football. What they've done is they've taken all the aggression away from this Winnipeg defense where they're not coming off the football, and that keeps the linebackers close to the line of scrimmage when you're running effectively, and there's no underneath support on the receivers.
First down. Give to Tony Burse, and he's tripped up by John Kropke as he crossed the line of scrimmage. John Kropke, an outstanding veteran of the CFL, 8 years in the league as the nose tackle for the Bombers.
John Kropke, a very solid addition, spent most of his career in Ottawa prior to coming here, but he was a great addition for that nose because he will tie up 2 offensive linemen on just about every play. The great Stan Mikkelus in his 15th season as a Winnipeg Blue Bomber scored a touchdown here in the 84 Grey Cup.
Playing in what probably is his final game. McManus, flag down, end zone, touchdown Jim Sandusky, but likely to be negated by the holding call.
Chris Morris, the right offensive tackle for Edmonton, is going to negate this touchdown with a holding penalty.
Holding, Edmonton number 60. Down repeated.
The big U of T grad shakes his head.
Now, he missed the last game, and he was activated for this game, but he's going to get too much jersey at the top of your screen. He's working out there on Angelo Snipes, not allowing the league leader in sacks to get any pressure on the quarterback, but had too much jersey on the play.
So the ball comes back to the 16-yard line. And it will be 2nd down over again. Touchdown to go. 4 receivers left side, and that's where McManus is looking in the end zone. Sandusky, touchdown. Well, 2 guys that have historically raised their game during the playoffs team up again. McManus to Sandusky.
That is Jim Sandusky's 3rd career playoff touchdown, but he did a job out there on the corner, turned him inside out. Great toss by McManus. Touchdown, Edmonton.
The afternoon gets longer for Cal Murphy. Sandusky with a pair today. And Fleming on to add the extra point. And halfway through this 3rd quarter, 38-1 for Ron Lancaster's Edmonton Eskimos. McManus to Sandusky twice this afternoon. The Eskimos have had 3 short touchdown drives today, and this one they grounded out for 11 plays before McManus and Sandusky hooked up again.
And Winnipeg's defensive line is just not getting any traction up front to put any pressure on Danny McManus, but Jim Sandusky did a marvelous job of running that post corner route for the 6.
Here's Eric Gulliford from his 20. Hopped over a couple would-be tacklers and slides his way over the 40. Malcolm Frank there, 23-yard return. Well, that's right. It is Jim Sandusky's weather. That's what Ron Lancaster said yesterday, and so did Cal Murphy, who said that Jim Sandusky reminded him a lot of Brian Kelly, who used to find a slippery part of the field and decide that's where he was going to leave a defender behind. And Sandusky, a master of it, like Brian Kelly, and it's giving Cal a few more gray hairs this afternoon.
And you wouldn't think that of a guy who grew up in San Diego, California, loving the snow.
First down for Reggie Slack. Steps away from Benny Goods, and then Goods comes back to nail him. Well, he was sandwiched there. McCready was in, and Reggie is slow to get up. That's 5 quarterback sacks for the Eskimos sack pack this afternoon.
And I don't think he's going to get up, but Derek McCready led the charge. You talk about a nose man. John Kropke, Derek McCready. You have to be able to collapse the pocket. Derek McCready tied up 2 Winnipeg offensive linemen, allowing Benny Goods to come around through the back door and pick up the sack on Slack.
Love you.
Kids trying to get some heat on the sideline, saying hi to the family back home.
Hey, baby, I love you.
He's going to need to get that love out to his offensive line and get some protection from him.
Slack continues to get attention, and he has not moved much. Boy, this Bomber team has been racked with injuries. They have not had the same receiving core for 2 consecutive games this year. They've gone through this quarterback problem throughout, and well, there was a time last week when it didn't look like they'd have one healthy quarterback.
Now, he came in with a thumb injury. Can you tell me what that was again?
That was the distal phalanx injury.
Okay, the distal phalanx injury. But now I think he has a left hip injury. So that one's easy to get out. So that's probably the problem, the reason why he hasn't gotten up. When Benny Goods made contact, he drove him into this turf here in Edmonton, which is frozen and quite hard. You get a great look. Watch as the left hip goes down on the turf, and that might be the problem with Reggie Slack right now.
I'd rather have the distal phalanx than that.
Than the gluteus max.
And Austin loosening up again.
Well, it's going to be really tough for Kent coming off the bench and loosening up. He's been sitting for at least a quarter and a half, and now he has to come back in and try to pull it out for Winnipeg with 6:59 remaining.
Good to see that Reggie Slack is up and on the Bomber sidelines. He's going to be spelled by Kent Austin, but it doesn't look like the damage too serious to the backup quarterback of the Eskimos. There's Larry Ruck, a graduate of the Saskatoon Hilltops, and yesterday the Hilltops, the national junior champions, prevailing 39-7 over Windsor. Our congratulations to the Hilltops. And here's a pickoff, and Cavis Reed's headed for the house. "45 yards for Cavis Reed. Third interception this year. He had 2 during the regular season on picks, and he takes this one from Austin into the end zone.
Cavis Reed's ambition in life is to be a neurosurgeon. That time he picked off Ken Austin's ball and also picked his mind on the play, because he's laid back in the weeds and read that one perfectly and took it for 6.
On any time. Unfucking
Austin with words from Milt Stiegel. Ago, there was a confrontation between Shannon Baker and Reggie Slack. No punches thrown on the sidelines, but clearly some heated words as the Bombers' unraveling continues.
Well, I thought at one point during the game that it would be much easier for the quarterbacks to throw more inside the hash marks than throw towards the boundaries. When the receiver has to make that plant on this slippery surface, the footing is not that sure. And if you're leading more inside, it's just a natural progression in following the football.
Cavis Reed tied for second in the CFL in interceptions during the regular season with 7. Ran 2 back and has a 3rd touchdown in 96. Untouched to the end zone.
Well, he had a clear lane, and that ball hung a long time going out in the flat. Gulliver tried to come back on it, but Reed had already gotten to the spot and picked it off.
James, at first they said it was snow flurries, but I think more accurately we could say it's an avalanche here.
It's a snowfall. If you look in the end zone on those tarps, it's sliding down.
Gulliford from his 21. And Eric Gulliford, another decent return near the 45, puts the ball down, and say it isn't so.
I'm trying to think that ball was down. They're going to say he fumbled it, but looked like his bottom was down on the ground prior to fumbling. But Edmonton, once again, special teams with a big play and great field position for the offense.
Green and gold have the football again.
You'll get a good look as Gulliford is trying to change hands with the football. Right here, he's stripped by Darian Kagan. Great execution by Kagan, a former quarterback at the University of Colorado, and now a very solid defensive halfback.
McManus stays in. He gives the ball to Tony Burst across the 40 and down to the Winnipeg 38. The highest scoring matchup between these two teams in their playoff history came in '84 at Winnipeg when the Blue Bombers thrashed the Eskimos 55-20 in a Western semi. The year before it was 49-22 for Winnipeg.
Well, when you think about this Edmonton's offense, their last two games, they've really been on a roll.
45 points on the board already. Blunt on the second down carry got back to the line of scrimmage. Not much more. Clemens and Kropke converged, and it's third down.
During the halftime, ran into Calgary's head coach Wally Buono out in the hallway. Now he has to be concerned about this high-octane Edmonton offense today because he's going to have to face them next week in the Western Final. So he's here taking notes and charting what they're doing, and he's going to have to go back home and make some adjustments.
Glenn Harper will punt on third down.
Third quarter, the Eskimos.
Just over 5 minutes to play in the third quarter. Harper angling that one. Gulliford let it bounce into the end zone, and it'll go out of touch for a single point. So the Eskimos add to their lead.
Well, as the Eskimos continue to put it to the Bombers, a comment now from our game day analyst, Dave Sapunjas. Dave, as this half began, I think most people would have thought the Eskimos wouldn't take any chances and throw the ball, but they've done just the opposite.
Yeah, so much for the conservative, traditional run the ball and run down the clock. I think that 2 minutes ago when McManus marched the ball down with an 11-play drive, over half the plays were passes, and hey, it's working for them. Why not go with it?
And I would say the interception by Kavis Reed, you probably could have seen coming, given that the Edmonton defensive backs know the Bombers have to take some chances now.
Yeah, the defensive backs know that Austin's going to throw the ball, so they're going to step up and try to get the pick for a little glory. When you're up by over 40 points, you can do that.
Chris?
Dave Sapunjas doesn't really want to give the defensive secondary guys any
You know, when you think about this Winnipeg offensive... corner. He just has a clear run to the quarterback, sack Edmonton.
13 for the Bombers, ball below 32.
And so, another punting situation for Bob Cameron. From the Bomber 32, Eddie Brown, the lone man back. Willie Plus went after that one. And on one hop, it's Brown. Couple stutter steps, and he's going to be nailed. That's Wade Miller. We talked about him in the first half, and he drops Eddie Brown for a loss on that punt return. Huge story this afternoon, 4 touchdown passes. The veteran Jim Sandusky with the pair. Eric Blunt has 1 through the air and 1 on the ground in this blowout. And Gizmo Williams really set the tone in the second quarter with 2 long punt returns to set up touchdowns. And the Bomber offense has yet to show up for this afternoon's game. Here's Eric Blunt. Straight up the middle from the 31 to the 36 for a pickup of 5. You saw Ron Lancaster there. They had a couple of weeks off, and yet he didn't give his players a few few days off to go away on vacation. They stayed with their routine. They worked out last week as if they were playing a game, and he said, I'm a routine guy, and the routine worked.
Well, you have to be consistent in this game. And, you know, when you have a guy with a system that he believes in, that's what he's going to stick with, and we've seen the effects of it this afternoon.
Here's McManus looking downfield, overthrowing Jim Sandusky. Jim has an 8-year-old son, Rocky, who is at a point where he can really take in the game and gets excited about it. Jim went through the entire season without a touchdown. Rocky was getting a little uneasy about the lack of production from Dad, but he got a late touchdown in the season and 2 today, so Rocky's got to be the proudest guy in Edmonton right now at what Dad's done in this playoff game.
Yeah, he can go to school tomorrow and say, my dad coach/wide receiver took 2 into the end zone, and you know he'll be a happy kid and telling all his friends about it tomorrow. He's probably somewhere in this snowbank here in Edmonton at the stadium.
What's nice about it is Jim Sandusky's been a great receiver in this league for a long time, and he really sees what Dad can do here. Gulliford from his 35. And again, the Eskimos downfield coverage is swarming. Jed Roberts once again leading the way. Just a 3-yard return after the 39-yard punt. And the snow is falling even heavier at this point of the game. We'd like to salute the CBC guys out in the elements that are providing the pictures and seem to give us their best effort when these conditions are prevailing. And a lot of them were at the hockey game last night and had a much earlier call this morning than I did, so I'm particularly impressed with their efforts. Reggie Slack in, and he's going deep, and Basinger double teamed, and Davis Reed and Mobley were there to make sure Basinger wasn't going to get loose.
Well, you know, in this type of conditions, I don't know if it's best for Slack to go up top. You got to try to make something happen. Dave Sapuntis pointed that out earlier, that they may need to go up top, but I don't think that the visibility is that good, or even the ball, with it as slick as it is, you might want to stay in that 10 to 15-yard range.
It's a time for a little luge competition.
Who needs a toboggan?
I think we just found Rocky Sandusky. 2nd and 10 from the 38 of Winnipeg. And Slack throws behind Gulliford. Incomplete.
And that's the problem when you're trying to throw towards the boundary, that receivers have to come back towards the football, and when you're doing that, you're going to lose your footing.
Looking for the biggest margin of victory in CFL playoff history, and it surprisingly enough involved the Winnipeg Blue Bombers just a short time ago, but they were on the other end of the score. Here's Gizmo, and he's off to the races again, puts the ball down, and the Bombers are on it. Greg Clark is on the football this time.
And K.D. Williams came up with the big hit. K.D. has been a highlight player this season for Winnipeg. He hasn't been that effective this afternoon, but when the game seems to be a chance for them to make something big happen, he comes up with the big hit. You see him knock the ball out of Gizmo's hands, and his partner in crime, Greg Clark, comes up with the fumble recovery.
And that elbow giving Williams trouble again.
Playing with pain and playing hurt. I think K.D. Williams is doing both of those this afternoon here at Commonwealth.
Outstanding season, number 2 tackler in the league. And nobody provided more defensive highlights than number 44. Slap to Boyko. How about Alan Boyko today in a completely one-sided affair? Boyko has been a single shining light for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers.
Well, every year they go into training camp thinking, hey, we can do better at this position, but Alan Boyko just keeps rising to the occasion. He has been noted over the years for having the best hands on this team. He had 27 receptions during the regular season, and he has another clutch reception here in this game.
Plays particularly well against the Eskimos. His best game during the regular season was here. 3 catches, 98 yards, and now the Bombers trying to put it in. Slack with time. Gulliford can't hang on. Went up and had his hands on it. Couldn't bring it down.
That one was a bit high, but that comes back to that thumb factor, where he has the damaged thumb, and the ball has a tendency to sail when you don't get a lot of tight spiralness on it, and that's what happened. The ball got wobbly and took off. He couldn't come up with the reception.
Not sure if Cavis Reed doesn't get his hand on that. No, over the outstretched hand of Reed.
Reggie Slack felt that's one that should have been caught. If a receiver can get 2 hands on it, Dave Sapunjas will attest to that. He dropped one last week.
So second down for Slack. And he goes back to Gulliford. Incomplete, and the Bombers may argue about contact there, as that was a timing play defensively, and the ball falls incomplete. On the final play of the third quarter here, the Western Semi is a rout at Commonwealth Stadium. Back in Edmonton, where one of the officials went to the Eskimo bench, they went over to see Gizmo Williams, who is wearing the black shoes again, and he has been sent to the dressing room.
I think the reason why he might have sent him to the dressing room is those spikes might be a little sharper than normal. They might have been grounded down a bit, and they're a little more pointed than what you can have as a football player on those half-inch cleats.
Try to get a ruling on whether he has been ejected from the game. One of the equipment men for the Eskimos has a helmet of Gizmo's in hand, and he's headed off. I don't think you just send a guy to the room to change shoes, do you?
No, you don't. Actually, those are the shoes that he had on in the first half. And you can see the officials checking shoes of the Edmonton Eskimos. Jed Roberts is having his footwear questioned right there.
There's Dave Ewell.
What he's doing is he's looking at the circumference of the spikes to see if the players have ground those spikes down to make them a bit more pointier. Cal Murphy.
A little late for that now, though. I'm sure that's what Cal's thinking.
Well, 2 years ago in the Eastern Final, Baltimore versus Winnipeg, that same scenario happened against Winnipeg, where several Bomber players had to change their footwear. They came out on the field with baseball cleats on, and in that cold climate, they felt that it was a hazard to the players with open skin, because if you get one of those cleats across the skin in this cold weather, you'll split it wide open.
Well, under Section 10 in the rule book, here's Dave Ewell to sort it out for us.
We have illegal equipment, 46 Edmonton. Be a first down.
And the penalty, it says the offending player shall be required to leave the game for a minimum of 3 plays and will not be permitted to return until the equipment condition is corrected. But James, we're ready to start the fourth quarter. The Eskimos clearly have been wearing these cleats for a long period of time. Scott?
Well, Chris, as far as I've been able to ascertain from the Eskimo bench, Gizmo going to the locker room has got nothing to do with his cleats. They say he's hurt his shoulder, and his shoes are not in any way a concern right now, but I'll check into this further and see what else I can find out.
Yeah, I'm suspicious of that, because the official went right over to the Eskimo bench and to Williams, and after conferring with Williams, Gizmo left for the dressing room. So right now the order of business is the first down, and the Bombers trying to get in the end zone. Richardson to the goal line, and no signal.
And not only that, when Gizmo left the field, he had put back on the shoes that he had on the first half, but what he did was taking the spat off of them, trying to say that they were a different type of shoe, but the officials made him leave after that point.
Leroy Blue preventing the touchdown.
Second and goal for the Bombers.
This is a critical point in the game. Even though the game seems to be out of reach, they need to get some confidence right here by punching this one into the end zone.
Dean Lytle and Richardson, but it'll be Slack touchdown. Bombers have their first major score.
Well, it was a long time in coming. A minute and a half into the fourth quarter before they were able to get on the scoreboard, but now Winnipeg has crossed the end zone for a major. Will they go for two?
Offense staying out there. Hey, there's a guy a little bit happier. There's one Bomber fan in the stadium.
Well, after investing in those shoes right prior to the game, he wanted to see the team pay dividends for him, so they finally got him a touchdown out of it.
He's even mustered a smile. Long afternoon for a great Bomber fan. You got to be a great fan to sit in this as a visiting fan and your team down by 39. Slack will try and cut it by 2 into the end zone for Boyko, and it's picked off. Trent Brown, they're saying he was out of bounds, but the 2-point convert attempt no good, and the score is 46-7 early in the fourth quarter in Edmonton. There's the story at Commonwealth Stadium as we're early in the fourth quarter. Bombers finally on the board with a major score, and we'd like to welcome the head coach of the Calgary Stampeders, who will be facing the Edmonton Eskimos next week, and a guy who invented the staples in the shoes, I think. Isn't that right, Wally? 1970.
Well, I didn't invent them, but I did wear them.
Now, he admits to it now, see.
How much do you think that's a factor in what we're seeing today? Cal Murphy said yesterday footwear might be decisive. How much of a factor do you think it's been?
Well, I think playing on the grass is a definite advantage to Edmonton. I think Edmonton doesn't even think about their footwear. They're comfortable playing on the grass, whether it's dry, whether it's wet, or whether it's frozen. So I think a lot of times it's more of a psychological thing, and their players know how to adapt to it.
Guess you like the idea of playing it with McMahon next week. Here's Jim Sandusky. He's done it all today, and now a kickoff return. The old guy looks pretty good. You didn't want to, you don't want me to bring it up, but I know you remember a Western Final not too long ago where Sandusky played a big role.
Like I say, those guys that are slow usually have good footing, and you know, Jim's always been a great player, and again, he showed he's a very versatile athlete.
You look at the insertion of Sandusky into this Edmonton offense, you think that's an added advantage for them to have their receiver coach working with their receivers during the game on the field?
Well, I think it's an advantage. Sandusky is a very intelligent football player, and a lot of what he does is he's able to read the coverage and settle into holes, and obviously that gives a lot of guys confidence.
Ball at the Winnipeg 45. And Cody Ledbetter in at quarterback. So Danny McManus is done for the day. And Jay Hamilton with the carry as the Eskimos backup men are getting some work, and the celebration continues. And you remember Cody Ledbetter from a game at Commonwealth Stadium. We haven't seen a lot of him this year, but he was dramatic in that come-from-behind win against you here.
Well, I thought for them that was the biggest psychological win, and I think it really helped them to get their season back on track. So you got to give Cody a lot of credit for that win.
Does it cause you some concern the way that Edmonton has been able to establish the running game today? And that's something that all teams need when the weather's like this at this point in the season.
Well, Edmonton's always been a good running team. It's got a lot to do with their offensive line. But, you know, that's something that we've always been able to stop. And, like I say, I think the conditions have a lot to do with it.
Well, we didn't bring you up here just to talk about bad memories of the past. Talk about the way you prepared this week and how it will change now that you know who you'll be playing next week.
Well, the thing, we went back to training camp for 3 days. We were in pads, and we basically just worked on the fundamentals of everything that we do, both offensively, defensively, and with our special teams. And what we wanted to do was do a better job of executing the things that we're doing.
You see it today. Eskimos.
Well, some of the Eskimos claiming who the best team in the league is. Mr. Buono's troops will have a lot to say about that next week. And, of course, the Argos and the Alouettes will decide the Eastern finalists for the Grey Cup. Ledbetter going to the air and throws over the middle. Tolbert slipped on the play, and it falls incomplete. Let me ask you the question most talked about in Calgary, and you know it's coming. Garcia Barrett.
been a good combination, and we're going to keep it that way for next game. But like I say, we're fortunate to have two quality quarterbacks on our team.
Well, you know, you think about what they've both been able to do. Jeff has done a fine job as a starter. You know, you've had the luxury of bringing Danny off the bench when he has struggled, and your players have been able to rally to that point. Do you prepare during the week for that type of scenario?
Well, I think you prepare for the fact that you have two quality quarterbacks. They get pretty much the same amount of reps. And when you look at it, Jeff's been able to start, win 11 games. Danny came in as reliever and won 2, and that's why we're in first place.
You could see the numbers for Garcia and McManus almost dead even on the year. I only wonder about Garcia in the recent weeks. Barrett has got so much momentum. Is he now looking over his shoulder? Are you concerned about a young guy looking over his shoulder at Barrett on the bench?
No, I don't think Jeff feels that way. I know Danny's been very supportive of Jeff, and the whole idea is that Jeff gives us mobility. When you look at the passing stats are pretty much the same, but when you look at the rushing, I think Jeff's close to 700 yards. And in the playoff games, mobility is going to be a big part of it.
Wally, thanks for joining us. Good luck next week.
Thank you.
Wally Bono, General Manager.
Welcome back to Commonwealth Stadium. Scott O, Chris Cuthbert, James Curry, and our game day analyst Dave Sapunj is with us. There are some of the Eskimos' shoes, and been a major source of consternation to the Bombers. Several times in this game, they've asked the referee to go over and check the cleats of the Eskimos. The referee's responded. He's checked Gizmo Williams twice, and so far, the only Eskimo found to have illegal footwear was Malvin Hunter. He's changed those cleats, and the Eskimos got a penalty. The Giz, and the Eskimos want to be clear on this, has gone off because of a shoulder injury and is unlikely to return to this game. And so, Dave, if this was a battle of footwear, and in many ways it was, the Eskimos have won it hands down.
No, absolutely, and it does come down to experience with their own field, that they know what to wear, and maybe a couple guys had some different shoes that maybe don't belong on their feet, but that's fine. I mean, you have to point out that Edmonton has played an extremely great game in all facets of it and have dominated right through.
You look at this score, and it certainly is not all footwear.
Oh, no doubt about it. You look at the players that have been involved, Flutie, Sandusky, McManus has had a great game defensively to stop them with Pless and Ruck, and interceptions by Reed. So it's been a great game for every player of the Eskimos.
All right, Chris.
Okay, Scott, so Gizmo has been cleared of the charges from the booth, and we...
Charges? You did it.
Well, I apologize and don't want to take away from what he did today, because Gizmo Williams set the tone for the afternoon in the second quarter.
He had an outstanding first half. I mean, 120 yards and punt returns and instant field position that his offense was able to capitalize on. And when you have a short field and you're working in the red zone, you should come up with 6, and Danny McManus did.
10 minutes, 55 seconds to play. It's 47-7 as we wrapped up our chat with Wally Buono. You saw Glenn Harper trying to kick the coffin corner punt, and it just went in for the single point. Now Bob Cameron. This one bouncing to Eddie Brown, and Brown upended in front of the Eskimo bench. Oh, we talked earlier about some of the most lopsided scores in playoff history, and at the top of the list, a 48-point margin of victory for the Bombers over the Hamilton Tiger Cats 4 years ago.
Well, you know, that Bomber team was a very powerful team, and they just came off of another Grey Cup appearance. But right now, this afternoon, this offense is nowhere in resemblance to what they had in the early 90s. This offense has only scored 31 touchdowns during the regular season.
3 teams in the league scored more than that just passing the football. Here's Ledbetter on the quarterback option, and Kropke wraps him up.
You know, it's been a real long day for these Winnipeg defenders. They've been out there a long time this afternoon, and they really haven't been able to stop this Edmonton offense. They have a lot of second liners in right now. This is very valuable experience for a young Cody Ledbetter, who has had sparse playing time this season.
Eskimos have the ball at the 53 of Edmonton. Here's Stan Mikolas in what is likely the final game of a great 15-year career. Blunt out of the backfield, drops the football, and it'll be third down.
You know, Stan Mikkel's most memorable moment probably as a professional football player came on a day such as this in the 1984 Grey Cup when he picked up a fumble return by Hamilton and rumbled all the way back. They had an hourglass keeping time on him getting to the end zone, but he took it into the end zone for a touchdown. One of his great moments in his great 15-year career. Blake Dermott, another old veteran. They're doing the long snapping for Edmonton on the play.
Glenn Harper. And this is Basinger. Raymond Basinger. Pretty good return. And it's now getting harder to see the yardage. Maurice Miller brings him down. Looks like around the 40. Darren Flutie says it's freezing out here, but it's been a sizzling hot Edmonton offense.
You know something? I will attest to that because it's freezing up here, and we're in the box.
I didn't think it was that bad. How about Buono? He's just got the sweater on. We've got the big coats.
Well, he has to stand on the sideline, so this is balmy weather for him.
Reggie Slack to the air, and that one skipped off the frozen turf. Basinger, the intended receiver.
And I have to think that that thumb is really bothering Slack now that the ball has gotten really hard. He really can't grip it, and he's not getting much on it. He's trying to keep those hands warm in those mitts, but he's keeping that right hand in and only looking at the wristband on the left.
Didn't start throwing the football till Tuesday, and then Wednesday practice was interrupted by a snowstorm such as this.
And he has tape on that thumb, so that's also going to make the ball slip.
And he has missed on his last 6. And in trouble again. Melvin Hunter back in the game. Hunts down Slack again.
You talk about hunting down 14 sacks on the regular season, second in the CFL, but they have been feasting on the Bombers quarterbacks. They have had 6 quarterback sacks this afternoon, and there's been no, make that 7, and there's been no let up in sight.
Melvin Hunter has 3 of the 7.
Well, Reggie Slack just didn't stand a chance. He has bad footing as he tries to elude the rush by Hunter, but Hunter, these Edmonton Eskimos have had great footing on this slippery surface this afternoon.
Third down from the Winnipeg 30 as Cameron punts it away. Here's Don Blair. The University of Calgary product wrapped up by about 4 Bombers. Ball sprung loose, but after the whistle.
All right, Chris, we have the video evidence of what James was talking about a moment ago. And Stan Mikkelwas, a flashback to the '84 Grey Cup here in Edmonton. The hero of the day for the Bombers, the Winnipeg boys. Stan Mikkelwas recovered a Hamilton fumble, ran it in for the TD to turn the game in the Bombers' favor. Winnipeg won its first Grey Cup in 20 years. Stan Mikkelwas closing out his CFL career in these playoffs. He was hoping for at least 2 more games after this one, but he knows now this will be it.
3 Grey Cup rings for Stan. 1 over the Edmonton Eskimos in 1990. That was a thrashing, 50-11 for the Blue Bombers. Eskimos got their revenge in 93, beating the Bombers 33-23, and you saw Mikkelwas in on that last tackle.
Well, Stan Mikkelwas knows that his career is winding down, but you still got to make plays down in the trenches, as we see Larry Ruck. Stan Mikkelwas coming off the ball. He got the good sure footing, so he has on the right shoes, spending that time on the sideline, fighting off the blockers, coming in, making the stop on Blunt on the play.
Ball right at midfield. And it's 2nd and 6 Edmonton, with Ledbetter operating out of the shotgun. And looking for Sandusky. There he is again. Jim Sandusky. And he might score. Sandusky stopped inside the 5. Well, he may have got to San Diego State, but there's a little Eskimo in number 7.
There's a lot of it.
50 yards for Jim Sandusky.
What an outstanding play by Jim Sandusky. Cody Ledbetter spoke about how valuable it was to get him into the game to get some experience, but Sandusky, after making the reception, knowing where he needs to go on the football field.
4 catches, 93 yards. Ledbetter thought he might have had his first playoff touchdown pass.
He's not finished yet.
They're at the 5, first and goal. They give it to Hamilton, and he's stacked up after a couple of yards.
You know, you think about the game Jim Sandusky has had this afternoon. In the first half, he was a very dominant receiver. He runs precision, crisp routes. They call him MacGyver because he figures out everything and he has a solution for it. And he's been carving up this Winnipeg secondary this afternoon. He's had defenders sliding all over the field trying to figure out where he's going.
Second and goal from the 2. Ledbetter keeps. Sandusky has the hat trick. 3 touchdowns for Jim Sandusky. Well, Rocky, this is what Dad has done for a long time in the CFL.
And Cody Ledbetter has his first CFL playoff touchdown, and Jim Sandusky with the hat trick on this Sunday afternoon in Edmonton. Hat trick, isn't that a hockey game or something? Well, it's icy out there. I get your point.
Well, Jim Sandusky has put on quite a display. And it's now 54-7 for the Eskimos. That says it all, doesn't it? The snow in the background, 54-7. It has been a long afternoon for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers.
It has been a tough day, and I think when they come out to
Horse number 1, all right.
when it comes down to handing out game balls after this game, there's 3 people that are going to have to be in line for game balls, and they're all coaches. Greg Newhouse, the defensive coordinator. Tom Higgins, the special team coach. Jim Sandusky, the receiver coach.
Dwayne Mandrusiak, the equipment guy and shoe specialist.
4 of them.
There's Gulliford, and Gulliford wrestled to the turf at the 30-yard line. Montreal earlier today, 22-11 winners over the Hamilton Tiger Cats. That's going to be a great Eastern final. Montreal and Toronto.
Well, you know, you think about the East and the West. You have the best 4 teams remaining in the CFL, and that's the way that it should play out. You look at Montreal, they've been a very dominant team as the season has progressed on. That offense had got healthy. Tracy Ham missed the first 3 or 4 games of the season with a back injury, but the team has responded after building a new franchise in Montreal, and they've gotten on a roll, 12 regular season wins.
4:42 left in this one. And you look back at the Western Finals in the 90s, and they have been dominated by matchups between Calgary and Edmonton. Reggie Slack over the middle, picked off. Glenn Rogers Jr., and he is going to score. Touchdown, Edmonton. And the avalanche continues.
And as they say, you can put that one in the bank, in the snowbank. Well, the fight last night was stopped with the TKO in the 11th round. I think we might have to call for a mercy rule with 4:20 to go in this one in the 4th quarter.
Glenn Rogers Jr. had 7 picks during the regular season. And like Kavis Reed, he now has an interception for a touchdown this afternoon. That's a 36-yard return.
And he said the family's celebrating back in Memphis, and he's celebrating here in Edmonton with this blowout victory this afternoon, 61-7. The Edmonton Eskimos over the Winnipeg Blue Bombers.
The biggest blowout in CFL playoff history, 61-7.
tell you, Chris, the Calgary Stampeders have to be concerned. They came in here 2 weeks ago and they lost to this Edmonton Eskimo team. This is a team in its last 2 games has scored well over 100 points, and so this offense can put up some numbers.
What do you think, Dave Sapunjas? Are you a little concerned about what you're seeing here?
Okay, I'm going to check the clock.
Oh, yeah, of course. We're a little worried about these guys, no doubt about it. But like I said earlier, when you're up in Commonwealth Stadium in a snowstorm, they always have the advantage. But I'll tell you what, they did play a great game, and we're looking forward to playing them next week.
It will be the 6th Western Final in the 90s between Calgary and Edmonton. And the Stampeders have won 3, the Eskimos the other 2, and there have been some beauties. Eric Gullifer, the flag down, as he's met head-on and driven back. 3:53 to go. Bruce Dixon met Gullifer. Well, we talked about their matchups in the 90s, but this is more up to date what they have done this year. Labor Day, it was a big second half for the Stamps. Cody Ledbetter with the dramatic final minute drive and the touchdown pass to Darren Flutie on September 6th, and then a game some people said didn't mean a whole lot. Ron Lancaster's team prevailing a couple of weeks ago here at Commonwealth.
I don't know if you can ever go into a football game or any sporting event and say it doesn't mean a lot, because momentum is what all athletes like to have when they're going into the next contest. And when you have Edmonton coming in, making a statement as they did, scoring 41 points in their last game versus Calgary, 61 today thus far versus Winnipeg, it has to create some concerns for Calgary.
Now Reggie just lost the football. That's a fumble. And let's find out. Well, James, there's a great example that that distal phalanx is giving Reggie Slack trouble.
Let me break that down for the people at home. That thumb injury that Chris is talking about, where he can no longer grip the football, it just slipped right out of his hands. And Ken Austin wasn't effective, but maybe you want to bring him back. Watch as he tries to just bring that ball back. He cannot grip. He possibly cannot even feel it. They may have frozen that thumb, so he's going to be totally ineffective during the rest of this ball game.
Now, wait a minute. Would you have to freeze the thumb in this weather? I think it's frozen.
Well, that's
one way or the other.
Yes. He has no feeling in it.
Basinger got back on it. It's 2nd and 25 from the Winnipeg 33. And slip sliding for a few is Jean-Pierre. We asked Ron Lancaster about the 2-week preparation for this game, and he said in particular we focused on things we had trouble with, some of our problems. He's going to have a tough time looking for problems as he gets set for Calgary and next week's Western Final. Jed Roberts looking skyward. No let up in the snow, and he's celebrating a happy birthday, his 29th. Roberts, a familiar name in the CFL.
Yeah, Jed has played 107 career games and has a Grey Cup victory. His dad, Jay Roberts, played tight end from 1964 to 1970 with the Ottawa Rough Riders and had 2 Grey Cup victories. He was the tight end prior to Tony Gabriel arriving.
Eskimos just keep coming. They almost blocked that. Don Blair put it on the turf. And the Bombers are arguing, and this goes back to 1971 and Harry Aboff's. It looked like Blair kicked it out of bounds, and if he did, it would be Winnipeg ball. There is a flag on
the no yards came first, so the kicking out of bounds won't matter at that point.
The Aboffs.
No yards. Winnipeg number 9.
I wasn't around in 71. Tell me about that.
Well, the Aboffs kick was a little more instrumental. It came shortly after the Leon McQuay fumble. And Calgary finished off the Argos to win the Grey Cup. Calgary getting set. Jeff Garcia. And the Stampeders will entertain the Eskimos. The decision desk has declared this one over.
Yeah, I wonder at what point did they decide that Edmonton might win this game.
Cody Ledbetter protecting a 54-point lead. Gives it back to Jay Hamilton out of the University of Alberta. 1,000-yard rusher with the Golden Bears in 1994.
He had only had one rush during the regular season coming into this game, so he may be getting a little winded soon. And so, you know, you talk about players getting valuable experience with. We had talked with Dave Sapuntis about that in Calgary's final game, that they were able to get a lot of second-line players in the lineup and gain some experience and confidence. Edmonton is able to accomplish that same thing this afternoon with their players. They get that valuable experience that carries a long way as far as keeping players mentally into the game.
Couple minutes to go, and Jay Hamilton getting another carry. So one U of A grad is busy on the field. You saw Trent Brown. I think somebody better give him a blanket. I think he's cold. And Kent Austin, you got to wonder, Kent Austin has had a brilliant CFL career. One of his great days was here in '89. A huge upset in the '89 Western Final. Is it his last day in the CFL? Ledbetter got crossed up on the handoff. Did the Eskimos get the ball back?
Well, he never got the ball out of his hand, so he held on to the ball, and they'll maintain possession, and they'll come in probably with their punt team. But Kent Austin has had an illustrious career.
There's
10 years, and yes.
Hello, everybody back home. I'll see you soon.
Embarrassing and humiliating.
And Shelly, see you soon. I love you.
It's hard to put any positive spin on one of his toughest days in the Canadian Football League.
Came into the CFL in 1987, suffered through some injuries in his rookie season in Saskatchewan, but 4 years later was one of 3 quarterbacks in the CFL to amass over 4,000 yards passing in a single season.
Teamed up with Danny McManus in that 94 run to the Grey Cup. Flags flying all over the field as Slack takes off, and Reggie slides close to the first down marker, but again, there is orange all over this snow-covered field.
Well, it's been a pretty flag-free game for the most part today. The officials have let the players play, and
Illegal substitution, Edmonton 24, first down.
Davis Reed came in a bit too late after the ball had been signaled in play. Chris Green, the big offensive guard for Edmonton, looking forward to next week's contest in Calgary, his second consecutive start in the offensive line for Edmonton.
Now, weather like this, you can wear that face mask here. Extra warmth. Deep.
Now you're going to get on Rob Waldrop all over again because he had the toque on a few weeks ago. Like I told you, the kid played at Arizona. Anything below 90 degrees, he had on the full metal jacket, you know.
Now, Rob Waldrop, we've mentioned it before. We kid him about the toque a few weeks ago here on a Western swing, but he'll be under the dome next week against the Montreal Alouettes, hoping to continue what's been a brilliant season for him. And the Argonauts
under the big top, and that's going to be a very exciting game. You got the 2 best teams in the Eastern Conference. Doug Flutie looking for his 5th most outstanding player in the CFL.
Slack wide open. Alan Boyko. Well, he tosses the ball away. If anybody on the Bombers can hold their head high today, it would be Boyko.
He's done a fine job. Get back to that story. Tracy Ham led the CFL in efficiency. So you're looking at 2 of the best quarterbacks in the CFL in that matchup. Montreal has a very dominating running game. Toronto is getting healthy on the defense. They've gotten Oscar Giles back on the defensive line, which will help shore up that defensive front. So it's going to be a very interesting match down in the trenches.
100-yard game for Alan Boyko. Here's a pass picked off. This is Mobley. Is he going to go? Slack's the only man. Now Dean Lytle trying to get back. Check that. That's Rogers. Glenn Rogers Jr. with the interception. And stopped before he could take it over the line.
And the Memphis State grad is still celebrating from his alma mater's first victory ever against the University of Tennessee, and he had a lot of weight on his shoulders to come out and have a great game this afternoon. He jumps the route. Basinger is sliding, can't come back on the ball, and Rogers closes, and he's taking it the other way before being tackled by Gulliver.
57 yards on the return for Glenn Rogers Jr. Second of the game. And a standing ovation for the Eskimos defense as they leave the field. Under a minute to go. And Jay Hamilton plows down. Ball was on the 15, and it looks like Hamilton got to the 10. Again, the markers obliterated by the snow.
Mom, I love y'all. This game for my granddaddy. He passed last week. That's for my granddaddy. He's in heaven. I love him.
Interception for Mom and interception for Granddad. Glenn Rogers Jr. A big afternoon. Second down, Ledbetter keeping it, and they'll track him down behind the line as Angelo Snipes brings Ledbetter to the turf. Charlie Clements was hot in pursuit. Third down, and the fans, those that are left here in the snowstorm, want the Eskimos to go for it.
Blake Dermott getting a chance to get in some reps. They signed Blake this week as an insurance policy. He had retired at the end of last season, but he's back in and he's taking some snaps in familiar territory, the playoffs with the Eskimos.
I'm curious here. They've got Malcolm Frank in the game as a wideout, spotting Jim Sandusky. And they're going for it. Hand up straight off the middle, and Hamilton will score. Flag down. Jay Hamilton in the end zone, but there is a flag down.
We're going to get roughing the passer on Angelo Snipes. The touchdown will stand for Jay Hamilton, his first professional touchdown, as Cody Ledbetter threw his first professional touchdown pass in a playoff game. Jay Hamilton will score.
Unnecessary roughness. Winnipeg 91. Penalty applied on the kickoff.
Jay Hamilton came into the game with one CFL carry for -3 yards.
You'll get a shot at the penalty. This is totally unnecessary and nothing but frustration by Angelo Snipes to take a shot like that on the young quarterback Ledbetter. But that's why you need to take your starters out of the game. You think about it, this was Danny McManus, and a shot like that was being taken on Danny McManus late in a blowout game like that, and you lose your starting quarterback going into the Western Final, it would be totally devastating.
Apparently the Eskimos not shy about putting a few extra points on the board. Time is out here, and the convert made by Sean Fleming. And this is one for the history books. Jay Hamilton with the last touchdown of a thorough thrashing. Cal Murphy waves across. His season's done. The Eskimos are going on to the Western Final.